Chapter 1160. When they saw Wang Lin reconstruct his body with the help of the netherworld true water and escape death, the others didn't know what was going on, but Su Anda's pupils suddenly shrank. Netherworld Nirvana. It's the strongest power of the Netherworld Nirvana incantation, but it should only be possible after the nirvana of the yellow spring Dao fruit is synthesized. The founder of the Netherworld demon sect, the Netherworld Taoist, was the second disciple of the king of the underworld, and also Su Anda's senior brother. Although the two of them had almost no contact, Su Anda undoubtedly knew some information about the Netherworld Nirvana incantation. The strongest power of the Netherworld Nirvana incantation was not reflected in attack or defense, but an extremely superior method of rebirth. When the Netherworld demon sect was still around, it was also famous. Su Anda was not surprised that Wang Lin had the yellow spring pearl and cultivated the Netherworld Nirvana incantation. But he was shocked that he could use the Netherworld Nirvana incantation when he was still in the primordial spirit incarnation realm. Wait, it's not the orthodox Netherworld Nirvana incantation, but a new power that he comprehended by combining the Netherworld Nirvana incantation with the Xianmen Tianzong technique? Su Anda reacted quickly, and his eyes flashed with an inexplicable radiance. It actually has such a miraculous effect. Just like the transformation of the Avicii immortal body into the Netherworld immortal body, this was the Netherworld Nirvana incantation that Wang Lin cultivated from the heavens Tao Te Ching, turning the Netherworld Nirvana incantation into the Extreme Path Nirvana incantation. It was a unique method of rebirth that belonged to him. The white light formed by the chi of rebirth was the bone, and the black air formed by the annihilation death intent was the meridian. Life and death were mutually reborn, and with the yellow spring pure water as the body, he used the ritual that was prepared in advance and was always ready to be used. At the critical moment, he was reborn in place of death and pulled himself back from the edge of death. But using the Extreme Path Nirvana incantation to be reborn in place of death was just the beginning. What Wang Lin did next shocked everyone present. The cross formed by the crisscrossing black and white light seemed to contain a mysterious and unfathomable power. As soon as Wang Lin said that, Great Sage Zhu Jian's turbid wave demon arrow, which had been refined with stars, strangely fell into the black light. Then, at the intersection of the black light and the white light, it strangely changed direction and entered the white light. In the next moment, it flew far away from its original target. Wang Lin's miss was like a law that made Great Sage Zhu Jian's demon arrows obey his orders obediently. Naturally, no one would think that this turbid wave demonic arrow would not hit Wang Lin. Wang Lin had predicted this result. The reason why the arrow did not hit its target was because of Wang Lin's supernatural power. Looking at the pattern formed by the intersection of two beams of light, one black and one white, that floated above the Taiji diagram like a crossroad, even the experienced and knowledgeable Tsangtian Daojian, Su Anda, Whirling Turtle Sage, and the others were stunned. What happened just now? Su Anda's eyes flickered. Although he was reborn using the death substitution technique, his vitality was greatly injured. His current state should be far from what it was before. How did he dodge the second arrow so easily? No, he didn't dodge it. It looks like he manipulated the demon arrow. Su Anda was extremely surprised. Even he could not withstand the Great Sage Zhu Jian's arrow just now. Wang Lin's actions were beyond his imagination. Whirling Turtle Sage's head popped out of his turtle shell. His turbid old eyes shot out a terrifying light as he stared at Wang Lin. It's not that Mo Ling missed, it's that this kid's supernatural power is too strange. The person who was even more surprised was undoubtedly Great Sage Zhu Jian himself, who had fired the turbid wave demon arrow. For the second arrow just now, he still locked onto Wang Lin's position with his demon eye secret technique. This second arrow should not have missed. It was not that no one could dodge his demon arrow, but with the strength that Wang Lin had displayed before and his vitality was greatly injured after being reborn using the death substitution technique, Great Sage Zhu Jian was confident that the arrow would hit its target. However, the reality that was placed in front of him stunned him. The problem lies in the crisscrossing black and white cross. Great Sage Zhu Jian's eyes were extremely solemn. He instantly expelled all emotions and thoughts that were not beneficial to the battle from his mind. The supernatural power that Wang Lin had suddenly performed was completely unfamiliar to great sage Zhu Jian. At this moment, he felt that the development of the situation had gone beyond his control. He had the intention to retreat temporarily and observe patiently. He would make a decision after figuring out Wang Lin's strength. This seemed cowardly and shameful, but from the perspective of a life-and-death battle, it was a wise move. In particular, although Wang Lin had used a strange supernatural power to dissolve the turbid wave demon arrow, his vitality was undoubtedly greatly injured, and his primordial spirit avatar was severely damaged. If the battle dragged on, it would be more advantageous for great sage Zhu Jian. Since the battle just now, great sage Zhu Jian had cast aside all his dignity and only hoped that the result would be to kill Wang Lin. At this time, he had no qualms about using the stalling tactic again. However, Wang Lin would not give him this opportunity. The crisscrossing black and white lights on the netherworld Tai Chi diagram suddenly pierced through the void and landed on great sage Zhu Jian. The crisscrossing black and white lights seemed light and weightless, but it was difficult for great sage Zhu Jian to dodge. Although the two lights were clearly visible, they did not seem to exist in this world. They were mysterious. The speed was not fast, but it seemed to ignore the existence of space. It was also difficult to describe its speed with time. A cold light flashed in great sage Zhu Jian's eye. Seeing that it was difficult to dodge, he snorted coldly, and his spine twitched. His spine turned into a bow and landed on the injured spot again. His chi and blood essence condensed into a dark red arrow with a monstrous murderous aura. The target was the netherworld Tai Chi diagram that Wang Lin had transformed. He wanted to fight attack with attack and kill Wang Lin first. On the blood-red arrow, a star lit up, and it was dazzling. With his spine as the bow, his blood essence as the arrow, and his demonic power condensed, this was the strongest attack of great sage Zhu Jian's turbid wave demon arrow supernatural power. At this moment, the arrow was imbued with the power of the star, which increased its destructive power to the peak. This was great sage Zhu Jian's most powerful attack in his current realm. Although he was cold, cunning, and used to guerrilla warfare, he never lacked courage and murderous intent when it came to the time to fight. However, just as he was about to draw the arrow again, Wang Lin's calm, indifferent, and emotionless voice rang from the netherworld Tai Chi diagram again. "You die." As soon as the voice rang out, great sage Zhu Jian was shocked to discover that he had silently entered the white stream of light. His body moved along the stream of light. When he reached the point where the white light and black light intersected, he did not continue to move along the white light. Instead, he turned at the intersection point, and his body merged into the black light in another direction. In the black light, great sage Zhu Jian was dumbfounded. He saw his flesh and blood rotting, and his demonic power was disintegrating. His immortal demonic soul was also collapsing. His life seemed to be approaching its end uncontrollably, and he was heading toward death. The concept of death was a little unfamiliar to great sage Zhu Jian, but now, the dark cloud of death was hanging over his head, and it seemed like all of this was because of a sentence from Wang Lin. Great sage Zhu Jian wanted to struggle, but he found that his consciousness was gradually blurring. This great demon's ferocious nature was also aroused. As he roared, he raised his power to the peak and shot his strongest arrow at Wang Lin. "You're the one who will die." Great sage Zhu Jian's single eye was cold. The wonderful wheel of time and space array that enveloped everyone suddenly changed. The 12 huge light pillars appeared again. The light pillars that were originally the brightest, the primordial sky dragon, the golden rock, the divine monkey, and Hun Dun dimmed a little. The other 4 light pillars became brighter. Among them, there was the phoenix, the black tortoise, and the qilin. They were all demons with strong defenses, strong vitality, and even the ability to regenerate. The last one was a great demon that had been extinct in the present epoch. Its name was Zhuzhong. It had the body of a bear and the face of a human. Its physical strength was strong, and its vitality was exuberant. It was covered in golden fur, and its defense was extremely shocking. It was almost comparable to a pure-blooded black tortoise. The light pillar that the 4 great demons were in became brighter, and the other 8 light pillars disappeared. The 4 light pillars gradually merged into one, becoming a thick light pillar that enveloped great sage Zhu Jian. It was the wonderful wheel of time and space array of the 12 sacred days array. It had transformed into the wonderful Wheel of Time and Space Array of the Heaven Protection Nirvana Array. Being enveloped by the wonderful Wheel of Time and Space Array of the Heaven Protection Nirvana Array, Great Sage Zhu Jian finally struggled back from the brink of death. At the same time, he launched his own attack. The black and white cross light landed on Great Sage Zhu Jian, but it was unable to block his strongest arrow. In the sky above the Taiji diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit, the true and false realm's divine power was cast. The door opened, turning real into false, and dissolved Great Sage Zhu Jian's arrow. However, Great Sage Zhu Jian's arrow, which was condensed with all his heart's blood, instantly exploded, and once again interfered with Wang Lin's true and false realm divine power. Although it also weakened the turbid wave demon arrow's power, it still broke through the true and false realm, and hit Wang Lin's primordial spirit incarnation, shattering his primordial spirit again. On the other side, although the wonderful Wheel of Nirvana Array of the Heaven Protection Nirvana Array saved Great Sage Zhu Jian's life, the 2 consecutive transformations had completely exhausted the array projection's power. His divine power Dharma spell is still incomplete. Otherwise, the wonderful Wheel of Nirvana Array of the Heaven Protection Nirvana Array might not be able to protect me. Great Sage Zhu Jian recalled Wang Lin's strange Dharma spell just now, and he felt a lingering fear. However, I finally killed this kid. However, before he could completely heave a sigh of relief, a white light shone in the void in the distance. Under Great Sage Zhu Jian's dumbfounded gaze, Wang Lin's body appeared in the white light again. Next to him, Songtian Dao Jian exclaimed, "Life substitution heavenly pill." The profound concept contained in the white light was the wonderful characteristic of the life substitution, heavenly pill. This was one of the 4 top-notch spirit pills that were once passed down in Taishu Temple. It was first created by the almighty alchemist in the ancient heavenly gates. Songtian Dao Jian had not seen it for many years, but he immediately recognized it when he saw the white light. After a cultivator consumed this pill, it could be used as a substitute for death once. Apart from very few special circumstances, it could save the person who consumed it, allowing the person to revive somewhere else and escape from certain death. The only problem was that it could only be used once in a person's lifetime. Even so, the effect was extremely powerful. Looking at this scene, even Great Sage Zhu Jian, who had always been cold and resolute, felt a sense of despair in his heart. Is this kid unkillable? However, before he could continue thinking about it, Wang Lin stepped out of the white light. In a flash, he had returned to Great Sage Zhu Jian, and he manifested the netherworld Tai Chi diagram again. Wang Lin's cold voice echoed in the void. Die. The crisscrossing black and white cross appeared again, and Great Sage Zhu Jian fell into the white light again. In an instant, he turned into the black light at the intersection point as if he was walking toward death. Great Sage Zhu Jian gathered his demonic power. It was useless. He roused his indestructible demonic soul. Destruction. He burned his own body to refine the power of the stars. It disappeared without a trace, and it was useless. He manifested his true form, and the power of his flesh and blood surged wildly. Everything was rotting, and there was no way to stop it. This time, without the protection of the 12 sacred heavens Hua Luo formation, only death awaited Great Sage Zhu Jian. It was irreversible, and it could not be changed. It was like fate. Chapter 1161. Inside the black light, Great Sage Zhu Jian's body collapsed and disintegrated with an irreversible, unstoppable, and unchangeable momentum. His body and soul were both destroyed. There was no earth-shattering change, nor was there a vast and terrifying fluctuation of Dharma power. It was silent, but it gave people a strange feeling that it was only natural. Everything seemed to be as it should be. It was as if that was the Great Sage Zhu Jian's destiny. There were no accidents and there were no ripples. However, when this scene entered the eyes of everyone present, it caused them to feel that it was inconceivable and peerlessly absurd. Mo Ling Zhu Jian, the current clan leader of the Zhu Jian clan, was one of the top great demons under the Enchantress. He was extremely powerful, and had already begun to experience the first tribulation. Moreover, he had experienced tribulation more than once. The turbid wave demon arrow was so famous that most powerhouses' expressions changed. They were unwilling to fight him. Many powerhouses of the same realm, even if their Dharma power and divine abilities were not inferior to great sage Zhu Jian, were unwilling to fight him easily. This was because the turbid wave demon arrow was too insidious and had extremely powerful offensive power, especially after great sage Zhu Jian locked onto his target with his one-eyed mystic technique. It was even more difficult for his opponent to evade. His star demon arrow's destructive power was so powerful that even some opponents with stronger Dharma power and divine abilities could not block it. When everyone present saw the last arrow that attacked Wang Lin, their hearts sank. The underworld hall master Su Anda's Dharma power and divine abilities were few among the human Tao integration stage cultivators. He could even fight against a great demon at the Star Soul integration stage who had revealed his true form. When facing other great demons at the first tribulation or going tribulation stage, due to the special nature of the king of the underworld's orthodoxy, he could protect himself and even fight against them. However, if he fought against great sage Zhu Jian without a suitable Dharma treasure, the outcome of the battle was not optimistic for him. Songtian Dao Jian was one of the 9 treasures of the heavenly gates. He had already reached the Mahayana stage in ancient times, and had not encountered any tribulation over the years. His strength was not inferior to the human race's top Tao integration stage powerhouses. However, he knew that he was no match for great sage Zhu Jian if he fought him alone. He was a sword. His attacks were sharp and powerful. The great sage Zhu Jian's forte was not defense. If he were to fight to the death with both of them, he might be able to injure the great sage Zhu Jian, but he himself would be doomed. Even the whirling turtle great sage, who served under the enchantress together with the great sage Zhu Jian, was adept at manipulating the changes in space and had a strong defense, but he knew that he would not be able to withstand the last arrow from the great sage Zhu Jian. Perhaps his ancestor, the pure-blooded black tortoise, could resist it with his defense, but he definitely couldn't. The Fei great sage and the Baifeng great sage, who had just joined the enchantress, were also impressed by the turbid wave demon arrow of the great sage Zhu Jian. They would never forget that when the great sage Zhu Jian was still in the realm of Astral Soul as one, he had once shot and killed a great demon who was also in the realm of Astral Soul as one. As the great sage Zhu Jian, who had the highest cultivation level and had experienced more tribulations than Ning Wanga, there was no doubt that he was the strongest. However, such a ferocious great demon seemed to have no strength to struggle at this moment. He was devoured by the mysterious black light, and both his spirit and body were destroyed. This bizarre scene made everyone present, including opponents like the whirling turtle great sage, the Fei great sage, and the Baifeng great sage, as well as people on the same side like Su Anda and Jian Songtian, feel that it was ridiculous and unbelievable. At the same time, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. The scene in front of them made their minds confused. If Wang Lin's realm had suddenly increased, his supernatural power had suddenly increased, or he had suddenly taken out a creation treasure and killed the great sage Zhu Jian, they could still accept it. However, the scene in front of them clearly showed that Wang Lin had been reborn twice in a row. His supernatural power did not increase, but instead decreased. However, it was as if his words were the law, and he had decided the fate of great sage Zhu Jian's life and death, sending him to his doom. This was completely beyond everyone's imagination. The netherworld Tai Chi diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit was now full of cracks, as if it was being torn apart. The netherworld on the Tai Chi diagram could not even be considered a wasteland. It was empty and desolate, filled with an aura of decline and decay. The Tai Chi diagram rotated slowly, and once again turned into a human form, revealing the appearance of Wang Lin. The injury on his arm was still there. Not only that, but there were also 2 unhealed wounds on his chest and abdomen. The essence of the Great Path was like drops of blood that fell to the void below him. Wang Lin's face was as pale as a piece of paper, without a trace of blood. However, his eyes were unprecedentedly bright. He looked at the crisscrossing black and white light in front of him, and watched as great sage Zhu Jian completely disappeared in the black light. The mysterious power concept made the whirling turtle great sage, and the other great demons unable to save him in time. Indeed, this new Dharma spell is not perfect. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he sighed. His sigh sounded like thunder in the ears of the whirling turtle great sage and the others. Although the white-haired young man in front of them looked extremely weak, his figure seemed even more terrifying. The great demons could not help but have the same thought. He should still be a primordial spirit embodiment realm cultivator, but what was that Dharma spell he used just now? Among Lin Feng's personal disciples, the one that the demon clan paid the most attention to was the second disciple, Zhu Yi, because he had the creation Dharma treasure, the Permitha Golden Bridge. This was unavoidable. And the person that the demon clan was most familiar with was the seventh disciple, Shi Tianhao. Among Lin Feng's personal disciples, he was the one who entered infinite wilderness the most. He had killed many people in the demon clan, and his reputation was completely built on killing. Sometimes his reputation was also built on eating. Relatively speaking, although Wang Lin was also in the eyes of the demon clan, they did not know much about him. However, after today's battle, Wang Lin's reputation as the killing god would also be widely spread in infinite wilderness. As a primordial spirit embodiment realm cultivator, he had killed Zhu Jian, who had already begun to experience the tribulation. It was already destined that his reputation would be known throughout the great heaven primordial world. In fact, from today onwards, Wang Lin would gradually begin to leave the protection of his master, the master of the celestial sect, Lin Feng. Because of his own powerful strength, his name would be known throughout infinite wilderness and the divine land, becoming an expert that no one could ignore. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao were known as the four heroes of the celestial sect. Ever since they all reached the essence soul realm in the extermination battle, they had truly stepped onto the biggest stage and danced with the big shots. After today's battle, Wang Lin would take a big step forward from the edge of the stage to the center. The war between the two worlds was filled with infinite danger, infinite opportunities, and infinite variables. The fall of an expert often meant the rise of another expert. Among Lin Feng's personal disciples, Wang Lin was the first to take this step today. What made the great sage of the revolving turtle sect and the others feel heavy and worried was that Wang Lin was not the only disciple under Lin Feng. The people who participated in the war between the two worlds and fought for the highest victory were all top experts. The clashes between them caused every participant to gradually reveal their true strength, which they usually hid and bided their time. But now, the celestial sect of Xianmen, a behemoth that made the vast land of the divine land and the vast land of infinite wasteland, had also begun to gradually reveal its enormous power that made most people suffocate. Just thinking about it made it difficult for people to have the heart to resist. After the projection of the 12 sacred skies' wonderful flower array disappeared, the confusion and pain in Ningguang's eyes gradually dissipated. She happened to see the scene of Wang Lin activating a new Dharma spell for the third time, and cursing Great Sage Zhu Jian. She had roughly witnessed Great Sage Zhu Jian's strength before, and was shocked at this moment. But soon Ningguang calmed down again. Without the disturbance of the enchantress's Dharma power aura, her eyes gradually regained their calmness. The colorful light around her was still flashing, but it was no longer chaotic and out of control. Instead, it revealed an even more mysterious aura. Ningguang looked at Wang Lin and said softly, "I'm sorry." Although she had fallen into a state of qi deviation and lost control, after regaining her consciousness, Ningguang naturally knew how her sudden change would affect the situation of the battle. Although Wang Lin had killed Great Sage Zhu Jian, he had also paid a huge price, and she was part of the reason. Ningguang turned her head and her eyes fell on Great Sage Baifeng, which made the great demon feel uncomfortable. She stared at Great Sage Baifeng without saying a word, but her figure flashed and she was already flying towards him. Why did the enchantress's Dharma power aura make her lose control? This was something that Ningguang was very concerned about. Great Sage Baifeng, Whirling Turtle Sage, and Fei Sage took a deep breath together. Their gaze is extremely complicated. Although the Wang Lin before them looked extremely weak, and the powerful spell that killed Great Sage Zhu Jian was undoubtedly a huge burden to him, Whirling Turtle Sage and the other great demons still did not dare to underestimate him. No one could guarantee that he could perform that terrifying and strange spell again. Similarly, the extreme nirvana of the Great Path and the life-substituting heavenly elixir had already been used up, and no one could guarantee that Wang Lin would not have other ways to substitute for death. Today's battle had surprised them, and there were too many things that confused them. Faced with this kind of completely unknown threat, Whirling Turtle Sage and the other great demons were not interested in continuing to challenge him before they understood his background. Great Sage Zhu Jian had already set an example for them. Moreover, even without Wang Lin, if Ningguang recovered from the state of qi deviation and joined forces with Zongtian Dao Jian and Su Anda, the outcome of the battle would no longer be within their control. Even if Wang Lin joined the battle, which would put a greater burden on him, Whirling Turtle Sage was not interested in perishing together with him. Under such circumstances, Whirling Turtle Sage and the other great demons chose to retreat without hesitation. That ring has fallen into Xianmen Tianzong's hands. Whirling Turtle Sage, Fei Sage, and Great Sage Baifeng looked at each other, their hearts heavy. They had lost Great Sage Zhu Jian for nothing, and they really did not know how to explain this to the enchantress when they returned. Chapter 1162. He had successfully killed Zhu Jian, but Wang Lin was not in a good condition. The Zhu Jian's turbid wave demonic arrow was indeed domineering and insidious. Even though Wang Lin had used the death substitution rebirth technique to reconstruct his primordial spirit, the injury was still there. Although it was no longer fatal, it still affected his condition and made him extremely weak. However, Wang Lin's eyes were bright, as if there were streams of light surging in them, reflecting the great Tao of heaven and earth. Under the heavy pressure of the enemy, his understanding of the laws of heaven and earth improved further. From there, he used a new divine ability to kill Great Sage Zhu Jian, and this process was fed back to Wang Lin, causing his understanding of the Tao to improve again. Under this cycle, his overall strength improved. Since he started cultivating, Wang Lin felt that his understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth was the most profound. At this moment, he even felt a little disconnected, and his spirit was extremely tired and weak. However, the light in his beer seemed to be getting brighter and brighter. Although Ningguang hoped to capture the Baifeng Great Sage and the other demons to find out the relationship between herself and the Enchantress Great Sage, but with only her, Su Anda, and the Sword of Heavenly Way, they would not be able to keep the Baifeng Great Sage, the Revolving Turtle Great Sage, and the Fei Great Sage. It was hard to tell who would win in this battle, but if Baifeng Great Sage and the other demons wanted to escape, they could do it. Ningguang had no choice but to give up. Wang Lin sat cross-legged in the void and said slowly, "What do you plan to do in the future, fellow Taoist Ning?" Ningguang looked at Wang Lin and said softly, "I've never come into contact with the enchantress of the demon race before, so I didn't know that there would be such changes between us. I hope to find my lost past from her." Wang Lin looked at her and said, "After this incident, the enchantress might also pay attention to you." Lin Feng, Wang Lin, and Lin Feng didn't know what the relationship between the enchantress and Ningguang was. They also didn't know if the enchantress knew about Ningguang's lost past 4,000 years ago. However, it was certain that the two were related. For Ningguang, the enchantress was an important clue that she was pursuing. It was also the only clear clue that she had so far. As for the enchantress, it was hard to predict how he would view Ningguang. Ningguang nodded and said, "Yes, that's right. One was a human, and the other was a demon. The enchantress's strength was above hers. Moreover, coming into contact with the enchantress's mana aura would cause her to fall into a predicament of losing control. It was undoubtedly extremely difficult for her to obtain information from the enchantress. If the enchantress also wanted to find her, she would be in a very bad situation." After a moment of silence, Ningguang said softly, "I hope to meet your master, the master of the celestial sect. Please introduce me to him." Wang Lin nodded and said, "Sure." Without the obstruction of the wonderful time wheel array and the space enchantment created by the Whirling Turtle Great Sage, Wang Lin and the others were able to return to the vast thousand worlds very quickly and re-establish contact with Lin Feng and the others. Lin Feng, who was above the deep abyss mountain in the infinite wilderness, had also received the news. Being sandwiched by the wonderful time wheel array and the deep abyss mountain, facing three great demons in the Dharma-ending realm, the Enchantress, the Great Sage, and Zhu Yan, even Lin Feng, could only barely maintain a defensive position when he didn't know how to use the heaven-sealing sword. If the power of the Deep Abyss Mountain was further activated, the situation would inevitably be even more disadvantageous to Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng's eyes were calm. He looked up at the enchantress and the wonderful time wheel array with a faint smile on his face. The huge light pillar in the void suddenly changed its appearance. The light shadow of a great demon appeared in the light pillar. Apart from the primordial celestial dragon, the figures of the demon ape, the Kuanpeng, and the black tortoise gradually disappeared. Instead, the three great demon shadows of the golden-winged rock, chaos, and the spiritual monkey stood side by side with the golden dragon shadow. At this moment, the mystical heaven and earth-shaking array had transformed into the mystical time and space wheel array. The enchantress had also received the message from the whirling turtle great sage and the other great demons, and learned of the death of the Zhu Jian great sage. In addition, she had received a report from the heavenly wolf great sage earlier, and knew that the heavenly wolf great sage was being targeted by Zhu Yi. It was extremely difficult for him to escape, and could not help the Zhu Jian great sage and the whirling turtle great sage. Her hope of obtaining the ring that originally belonged to the golden rock great sage had been dashed. Not only that, but she had also lost one of her most capable subordinates, the Zhu Jian great sage. The enchantress could be said to have suffered a great loss this time. The gains did not make up for the losses. However, she maintained a calm state of mind, and did not continue to fight with Lin Feng. The Zhu Jian great sage and the others had failed. It was meaningless for her to delay the action of the Lin Feng great sage here. Although she had the idea of not continuing to let Lin Feng grow stronger and join forces with the other great demons to severely injure, or even kill him, she obviously did not have enough confidence at the moment. It was fine if Lin Feng did not release the sealing heaven punishment sword. Once he did, both sides would suffer, and the result of his own side being defeated was not what the enchantress wanted. Therefore, after receiving the report from the revolving turtle great sage and the others, the enchantress made a prompt decision. Without the slightest hesitation, he immediately changed the amazing heaven and earth shaking formation into the amazing time and space spinning formation, and quickly left the Spirit Deep Mountain. Lin Feng's dharmic journey to the Spirit Deep Mountain was originally to lure the Golden Rock Great Sage and her out. Now that the Golden Rock was in danger, she had become Lin Feng's target. If they did not have enough confidence, even if the Great Sage and the Zhu Yan Great Sage had the Spirit Deep Mountain, they would naturally not fight to the death with Lin Feng. It seemed to be rising slowly, but in fact, the huge light beam that instantly broke through the void broke away from the sky above Yujing Mountain. Lin Feng looked up and said, "Are you in a hurry to leave now?" With a thought, the yin and yang life and death formation above Yujing Mountain suddenly unfolded, changing from defense to offense. With the change of the two poles, it sucked in the amazing time and space spinning formation that was trying to escape. Within the yin and yang life and death formation, Ding of Shenzhou shook and began to fall down with the yin and yang life and death formation, as if it was being dragged by the weight of the entire vast thousand worlds. The amazing time and space spinning formation that was rising up to escape was immediately fixed again, unable to escape. In the light beam, the enchantress's eyes could be vaguely seen. They were like bright stars, looking down at Lin Feng on Yujing Mountain without sorrow or joy. And on the Spirit Deep Mountain below, the Great Sage and the Zhu Yan Great Sage watched the scene expressionlessly, but they did not do anything else. Although the demonic atmosphere of the Spirit Deep Mountain soared to the sky, its power did not increase. It only maintained its original state and fixed Lin Feng's Yujing Mountain in place. At this moment, although Lin Feng had changed from defense to offense, making it impossible for the enchantress to escape, in fact, he was still at a disadvantage. With the Spirit Deep Mountain's geographical advantage, and the existence of the 12 amazing divine light formation, Lin Feng's current strength could not withstand the three demons with their full strength. But once the sky-crushing sword was unsealed, the outcome became unpredictable. Without sufficient confidence, neither the ape clan nor the enchantress could make up their minds to fight to the death with Lin Feng. The current situation was not beneficial to the demon clan in the war between the two worlds. The Golden Rock Great Sage had fallen, and the Enchantress, the Great Sage, and the Zhu Yen Great Sage, 3 great demons of the Dharma-ending realm, were restrained here by Lin Feng. Meanwhile, the Dragon Clan and the Taishu Temple were engaged in a fierce battle in the mysterious sea. Xianmen Tianzong and the Taishu Temple joined forces to share the pressure brought by almost all the top great demons of the Demon Clan, while the other experts of the Human Clan, led by Emperor Qin Stonefeather, began to attack Infinite Wasteland. Even the Great Zhou dynasty, which had been hiding its strength and biding its time, seized the opportunity to take the initiative to attack. At this point in the war between the two worlds, the situation was very beneficial to the cultivators of the Human Clan. At this moment, in the Yingxi, in the hall at the peak of Mount Penglai, a huge figure that was 40 feet tall was sitting cross-legged. His facial features were handsome, and his body was well proportioned. Although he was much taller than an ordinary person, he still looked very harmonious sitting in the empty hall. He was a zenith heaven. Under Lin Feng's guidance, this huge body was condensed from the 9 streams of clear qi of Mount Penglai. It was only 40 feet tall at the moment, and would only be close to completion when it reached 90 feet tall. However, the appearance of this clone was the image of zenith heaven when he was called Luo Yao. His facial features were exactly the same as Luo Yao's, except that he looked a little older, and his body was much larger. In front of this clone of zenith heaven's 9 qi, a purplish gold pearl floated. It was the heavenly scarlet golden pearl in which the demon soul of zenith heaven's true body resided. Golden fog appeared in the heavenly scarlet golden pearl, flashing with purple light. The fog gradually condensed into a form in midair, which was the appearance of a Yudu beast. Its facial features and limbs were similar to a human's, but it had a triangular head and a silver-white mane on its back. Its body was covered in purple light patterns, and it was the appearance of Zenith Heaven's true body. Zenith Heaven's true body and his 9 qi clones sat opposite each other, cultivating together silently. Their auras were constantly connected, and the clear qi of Mount Penglai was also poured into him. Suddenly, the body of Zenith Heaven's true body that was formed by the heavenly scarlet golden pearl trembled slightly. He opened his eyes, which were flashing with purple light, and his face was filled with shock. Before he could think, Zenith Heaven's true body had already turned back into fog and returned to the heavenly scarlet golden pearl. Then, the heavenly scarlet golden pearl began to tremble violently for some unknown reason. Zenith Heaven's 9 qi clones were puzzled. After carefully analyzing it for a moment, he quickly contacted Lin Feng. Master Lin, the heavenly scarlet golden pearl has suddenly changed, but it's just a simple tremble. I don't know what it means. Oh. Lin Feng's gaze flickered slightly, and many thoughts appeared in his mind. He said, "Stay in Mount Penglai and don't go out. If there are any other strange movements, just contact me immediately." Zenith Heaven nodded in agreement. After cutting off the connection, Lin Feng turned around and looked at the barren space in front of him with a slight frown. 4-colored lightning danced in the void. The person here wasn't Lin Feng's true body, but his clone of Brontosaurus. He had originally come to find the Yudu skeleton of Golden Rock Great Sage, but when he came to that dimensional world he searched everywhere, but the skeleton was nowhere to be seen. Logically speaking, the skeleton was randomly teleported here by the world-breaking stone. Other than Lin Feng, who had left the spatial waymark, and Golden Rock Great Sage, who had once sacrificed it, no one else should be able to determine its location. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly as he pondered. Chapter 1163. The skeleton contained powerful spirit energy. Although it had no consciousness, it couldn't be treated as a dead object that couldn't move. It was just that when Lin Feng used the world-breaking stone to move it to this deserted medium dimension, the skeleton was in an extremely unstable state. The power contained in it could explode at any time. Under such circumstances, without Golden Rock Saint's control, it should have gradually calmed down, or it could completely explode and destroy the medium dimension. However, when Lin Feng came to this medium dimension, he couldn't feel the existence of the skeleton, which surprised him. Of the people present at that time, even though Lin Feng could see that Emperor Zhou and Liang Pan were deeply hidden and still had hidden methods, but to find the randomly moved skeleton was probably still beyond their abilities. The Haotian mirror was still in the mysterious sea, so Yen Nanlai naturally couldn't find the Yudu skeleton. Among the remaining people, Golden Rock Saint had been killed by the enchantress, so it couldn't be him. The Heavenly Charm Great Sage had intercepted and killed the Golden Rock Great Sage. She might be able to get some clues from the Golden Rock Great Sage, but she herself needed time to intercept and kill the Golden Rock Great Sage. Logically speaking, it should not be as fast as Lin Feng's Thunder Dragon clone. Was it Great Peafowl Saint? Lin Feng pondered. Great Peafowl Saint's whereabouts were unknown, so he couldn't be sure if he had come to find the skeleton. Although Golden Rock Saint and Great Peafowl Saint had a close relationship, it was hard to say if Golden Rock Saint would let Great Peafowl Saint have a share of such an important treasure. However, Lin Feng felt that the sudden disappearance of the Yudu skeleton had nothing to do with Great Peafowl Saint. Even if Great Peafowl Saint could find the skeleton, he would be slower than Brontosaurus's clone. After all, although Lin Feng's true body had returned to the Great Thunderclap Monastery in the Divine Land with the power of the World-Breaking Stone, and entered the Black Hole, the first thing Lin Feng did was to drive his Brontosaurus clone to the medium dimension. Who knew that after entering the medium dimension, he would find nothing? In the time that followed, Lin Feng turned the medium dimension inside and out, but he still couldn't find the skeleton. With Brontosaurus's clone's divine arts and demon power cultivation, after such a long and serious search, even an ordinary rock would have been found, not to mention the huge amount of demon power contained in the skeleton. During this time, no one else entered the medium dimension. Lin Feng vaguely felt someone approaching but quickly retreated. The aura of the person's magic power was similar to that of Enchantress, so it was very likely to be his clone. Logically, others shouldn't be able to get here before me. If it isn't someone who was there at that time, things will be interesting. Lin Feng thought about the news that Zenith Immortal had mentioned when he had contacted him and thought, could it be that the Yudu race is really going to come out again? With that thought, Lin Feng frowned. When the Spirit Sea was sealed the last time, the imprint on the Yudu race shouldn't have been completely erased. But judging from that time, the imprint will probably be erased before the Spirit Sea reopens 100 years later, and the Yudu race will be able to see the light of day again. But it still shouldn't be so soon. Whether it was Lin Feng or Taishu Temple, they all hoped that the war between the two worlds would break out as soon as possible. Of course, part of this was due to the calamity that the Tenryugen Gen had experienced, but it was also due to the fact that the Yudu race could come out again at any time. Lin Feng controlled the heavenly scarlet golden bead, and when the Spirit Sea was sealed once again, he had a clearer sense of the movements of the Yudu race. Even though the Yudu race couldn't erase their imprint completely in the chaos of that day, they didn't need to wait for the Spirit Sea to reopen 100 years later to break free of the shackles on them. But logically, it shouldn't be so soon. Am I thinking too much? Lin Feng raised his head slightly. But if it isn't Yudu, where did the skeleton go? The sudden movement from the heavenly scarlet golden bead probably isn't a coincidence. He shook his head and took a deep breath. The clone of the Brontosaurus shed its human form and revealed the true form of the silver Brontosaurus. Four-colored lightning flashed continuously, and there was even a black glow flowing on the surface of the lightning. The huge silver Brontosaurus stretched across the void, and its eyes gradually lit up with a purple glow that was domineering and profound. He had tried this method before, but there was no reaction. However, after such a long time, Lin Feng executed it again. It wasn't an attempt out of helplessness, but Lin Feng knew that if someone had taken away that piece of Yudu skeleton, he might be able to conceal his traces at the start, but if he had to sacrifice it or perform some kind of ritual, it would be hard for him to not reveal any traces and be caught by Lin Feng. Lin Feng cultivated his spirit to return to the void, and comprehended his Tao of two extremes. He had referenced the contents of heavenly Tao demon scriptures, and his clone of the Brontosaurus had also cultivated heavenly Tao demon scriptures. His ability to sense the Yudu skeleton surpassed many people's imaginations. The eyes of the clone of the Brontosaurus shone with a purple glow, but there was no other reaction. However, Lin Feng didn't lose his patience. The clone of the Brontosaurus silently executed its demon power. After an unknown period of time, the purple glow suddenly trembled, as though it had formed a connection with a place far away. It stretched out into the distance like a path. Even though this path appeared and disappeared from time to time, shaking nonstop and looking very unstable, Lin Feng instantly smiled when he saw it. The huge silver brontosaurus turned and flew along the path paved by the purple glow. It flew into the void far away and left the dimensional world that it was currently in. After flying for a short while, Lin Feng's expression couldn't help changing slightly. He looked over and saw the void in front of him suddenly changing. In the dark void, there was a dazzling purple glow that covered the starlight in the sky. The purple glow spread out and covered the sky, making people's hearts palpitate. The terrifying power rippled continuously and shook the sky. Lin Feng could even clearly see the traces of destruction in the void. The void was destroyed, forming a chaotic scene. However, under the intimidation of the purple light, the moment it transformed into a new void, it was destroyed and turned into nothingness before it could completely form. The source of this terrifying scene was in the center of the purple light, where there was a strange and unfathomable skeleton. Beams of purple light spewed out from the Yudu remains, and countless runes and diagrams spread out in all directions. They were engraved in the void and turned a radius of 10 million miles purple. It was as though it was an independent world. Even Lin Feng's brontosaurus clone had a feeling of wanting to worship this terrifying power from the bottom of his heart. The dragon might of the dragon race naturally produced a heavy awe to other life forms. It was as though it was the mandate of heaven and the style of an emperor. However, at this moment, facing the Yudu remains, the dragon might of Lin Feng's brontosaurus clone that was like a thick thundercloud actually slowly dissipated. As the last imperial race of Heaven Wasteland, Yudu's reign was truly heavy during its period of rule. It was practically engraved in the demon souls and bloodlines of other demon races. Lin Feng shook his head. This dragon body of mine has been refined by me, so it's already very special. If it were any other dragon race, they would probably be suppressed even worse. When the bloodline is purified and the body of a primordial heavenly dragon is reformed, then perhaps I can be immune to the pressure from Yudu on the same realm. However, facing this skeleton of Yuhuang Celestial Sea, even a heavenly dragon in the last days realm would feel immense pressure. However, this skeleton is a dead object after all, so the pressure can still be overcome. I just have to be wary of the powerful power it contains. Lin Feng swept his gaze and realized that the skeleton was being activated by someone. The power inside wasn't as violent as when Golden Rock Saint had activated it. Instead, it had become orderly. But in Lin Feng's eyes, this scene did not make him feel happy at all. This meant that the person who had activated the skeleton was very likely the Yudu beast of the same race as Yuhuang Celestial Sea. It's really Yudu. What are they trying to do? Lin Feng's gaze flickered slightly. If they've already broken free from the restraints of the Spirit Sea, then they should be able to return to the boundless world directly. Why are they casting spells on this skeleton? What's the use of this ritual? Lin Feng frowned. He saw the dazzling purple light in the void gradually outline a hazy and illusory spell altar. The lines of the spell altar were slightly blurry and unclear, but the concept that leaked out from it made Lin Feng frown slightly. From the center of the spell altar, a dazzling pillar of light shot out into the void above, straight into the sky. Although the pillar of light seemed to be shooting towards the void above the spell altar, there was actually no direction in the chaotic void at the edge of the boundless world. It was hard to determine where the pillar of light was going, so one could only be sure that it was shooting towards a certain direction in the boundless world. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly, and his consciousness swept out. He felt the aura that leaked out from the pillar of light, and his expression changed. This spell altar seems to be a signpost. It seems to be guiding something. After pondering for a moment, Lin Feng came to a realization. I see, Yudu race wants to move their ancestral land. Ever since the war between the two worlds, Yudu race had always been hidden in a dimensional world. That place didn't come into contact with the outside world, and if they wanted to enter, they could only be forcefully broken open by strong practitioners. In that dimensional world stood Yudu Royal City, which was also where the ancestral land of Yudu race was located. After Yuhuang Celestial Sea conquered the ape race and dealt a heavy blow to Spirit Abyss Mountain, that place was a stronger existence than Spirit Abyss Mountain, and it had disappeared along with Yudu race. That was a backup plan that Yuhuang Celestial Sea had personally left behind to merge Yudu Royal City with that dimensional world. During the Battle of the Spirit Sea back then, according to Yuhuang Celestial Sea's will, the great demons of Yudu didn't execute the power of their ancestral land to prevent the Spirit Sea from retaliating. Now that Yudu race had broken free from the restraints of the Spirit Sea and wanted to return to the boundless world, they naturally wanted to bring Yudu Royal City back to the boundless world as well. To execute the ritual through the power of the world, the ability of the caster must be extremely high. Lin Feng's pupils contracted slightly, but he didn't slow down at all. The claw of the Brontosaurus moved, and a few beams of light flew out to sweep towards the spell altar. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone had only just moved, and the surroundings of the spell altar instantly trembled. Dazzling purple light danced non-stop, and it was as though a tsunami was wreaking havoc. Chapter 1164. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone looked at the blurry spell altar in the air. The demon power in it was like a tsunami that shook the surrounding void. Lin Feng didn't touch it blindly. His demon power was also coated with a layer of purple light. Although it was milder than the power of the spell altar and the skeleton, it was still strange and domineering. It was as if it came from the same source. It looked as if the spirit chi in the surroundings was absorbed and assimilated by the spell altar before being sucked over. In this way, it became much easier for Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone's demon power to approach the spell altar. It no longer caused intense hostility. Lin Feng's demon power followed the purple light and gradually entered the spell altar. The ritual looked rough, but when Lin Feng understood it, he instantly discovered that the changes in the demon power were fine and subtle. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Countless talisman patterns converged together, ceaselessly changing their arrangement and combination, and it was dazzling to the eyes. However, Lin Feng more or less had some understanding towards the divine arts of the Yudu race. These transformations that made other people feel complicated when they saw it. In his eyes he could see some clues. The method of the heavenly Tao demon scriptures, the innate divine arts of the Yudu race, and the unique understanding of the laws of heaven and earth of the caster. Lin Feng nodded slightly. At the same time, his mood gradually became solemn. That was because when he was studying the spell altar, he faintly heard the wail of the great Tao. This sound wasn't really heard by Lin Feng, but it rang in his heart. This was because when his Brontosaurus clone's consciousness and demon power explored the spell altar gave him feedback. Listening carefully, Lin Feng could even feel that it was two wails overlapping. One was stronger, but it seemed rigid. The other was weaker, but it was agile and full of changes. The former belonged to the remains in Yuhuang Celestial Sea, while the latter undoubtedly came from the Yudu beast that was activating the ritual. If the experts of the demon race successfully survived the tribulation, then when they revealed their true form, their demonic aura would resound with the mournful wails of the great Tao. The Yudu beast that was activating the ritual had actually successfully gone through the middle tribulation and reached the cultivation realm of the middle tribulation stage. When Lin Feng saw that the other party was able to construct a ritual, even though they were separated by the power of the domain, he was already alarmed. He knew that this was a powerful opponent, and now he had further confirmation. However, Lin Feng still had some doubts in his heart. Back when I was in the Spirit Sea, I saw the Yudu beasts and the people of Taishu Temple wrestling in Yudu Royal City. Even though there were quite a number of strong practitioners, I didn't see any of them experiencing a calamity. After the Spirit Sea was sealed once again, some great demon of Yudu in the last days realm tried to experience the calamity and succeeded. On top of that, it passed through the period of weakness in a short time. In the three calamities of creation, the collapse of the great Tao would ignore the changes in time and space. The time of the person experiencing the calamity would be the same as that of the boundless world. However, the time needed for different people to recover would be different. Or could it be that the Yudu beast in the middle tribulation stage had just experienced the calamity and was at its weakest, so it simply didn't make a move? Many thoughts flashed through Lin Feng's mind. Or could it be that the Yudu beast was in death seclusion and couldn't care about what was happening outside? In any case, this discovery was definitely not good news for Lin Feng. He wasn't afraid of the other party, but this sudden and unexpected change would have an impact on the war between the two worlds. It was hard to predict, and it would cause the situation to change beyond Lin Feng's control. During the Battle of the Spirit Sea, Taishu Temple and the Yudu race had fought with each other across the Spirit Sea. This allowed Lin Feng and Taishu Temple to have a rough judgment of the Yudu race's abilities. Even though he had tried to bring forward the time of the war between the two worlds, and the Yudu race wouldn't be able to return to the boundless world in time. In Lin Feng's many plans, he had left a place for the Yudu race in the worst-case scenario. If the Yudu race really returned to the boundless world, Lin Feng wasn't completely unprepared. However, that was against the power that the Yudu race had displayed at that time. The sudden appearance of a Yudu beast that had experienced the Middle Tribulation couldn't be ignored, especially when the other party had tried to bring Yudu Royal City back to the boundless world. In theory, any top-notch great demon in the Last Days realm could successfully experience the Middle Tribulation, but without enough accumulation, the probability of success was far lower than the probability of failure. The appearance of a Yudu beast that had suddenly experienced the Middle Tribulation was one of the worst scenarios that Lin Feng had predicted. However, he had to think carefully about how to deal with it. However, that was a matter for the future. To Lin Feng, the first thing he had to do was to disrupt the other party's ritual and stop their abilities from growing further. The Yudu race had returned to the boundless world, and to them, there were many things that they were clueless about. Their first priority was to gather information and understand the current situation of the heaven primordial world. After all, they had been separated from the world for over 4,600 years. But after getting a clear picture of the current situation, Yudu clan would almost definitely join in the war against the current situation of the two worlds. At that moment, the situation of the human race was great, and the situation of the demon race was terrible. The Yudu race could use Lin Feng, Taishu Temple, and the rest to sweep away the obstacles to their return to the demon world of Heaven Wasteland Vast Land. However, if the power of the demon race was severely damaged, they wouldn't be happy to see it. The main strong practitioners of Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror stayed in the Mysterious Sea, while Lin Feng's main body and Mount Yujing were restrained by the primordial devil ape race and the Enchantress. To the Yudu race, this was also a rare opportunity. They would have a huge advantage. Lin Feng didn't even need to think much to guess their number one target. They had fought a bloody battle in the previous war between the two worlds, and their hatred was as deep as the sea. This time, their main force was restrained by the dragon race in the Mysterious Sea, and their Taishu Temple was severely lacking. There was no Haotian Mirror, no Grand One Venerable, Shoichi Dashin, and Dao Venerable Qing One. There wasn't enough power in the great formation of Yin and Yang of the Great Void. In such a situation, if the Yudu race went all out, under the leadership of this Yudu beast that was undergoing calamity, they might be able to break through White Cloud Mountain. Whether the dragon race would be willing to let the great demons of Yudu into the Mysterious Sea to deal with the main force of Taishu Temple was hard to say, but all the demons would be happy to see White Cloud Mountain being flattened. This result would cause numerous chain reactions, and it would change the entire situation of the war between the two worlds. It would cause Lin Feng and the rest of the strong practitioners of the human race to lose control of the future. Lin Feng frowned slightly, and he communicated with his main body, the clone of War God, and the rest of the people in Xianmen Tianzong. He then reported the news to the various powers of the human race in the Divine Land. Lin Feng wasn't sure if the others believed what he said, how they would deal with the news, and what thoughts they had in their hearts. However, he would inform them of this important news in time to prevent the people in the Divine Land from being caught off guard. Not long later, a tall figure wearing armor appeared in the void. His facial features were the same as Lin Feng's. It was his clone of War God. At the same time, an even taller giant that reached a height of 90 yards also appeared beside Brontosaurus's clone. It was the 9-Chi clone that Lin Feng had cultivated with the 9 paths of clear Chi of Mount Penglai. The two clones arrived at the scene and they didn't say anything. They each took a corner and stood in a triangular formation with Brontosaurus's clone. They didn't direct the magic power of their divine arts into the purple spell altar. Instead, they buffed the Brontosaurus's clone and let Brontosaurus's clone take the lead. The majestic yet low-profile magic power spread continuously in the purple spell altar and slowly corroded it. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but Lin Feng's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. In his consciousness, an image gradually appeared. It turned from blurry to clear, as though it was appearing in front of his eyes. In the world of darkness, black fog filled the air. In the depths of the black fog, there was an incomparably huge city. The city was completely black, but it flashed with silver light. In the void above the city stood numerous Yudu beasts. They all had triangular heads and humanoid faces, but their backs were covered with long silver-white fur. A huge tail dragged behind them, and the surface of their skin was covered in purple runes. Silently, the Yudu great demon in the lead stood with his mouth open. In front of him floated a purple ball of light. Countless streams of light flowed out from the ball of light, and they were all connected to the huge Yudu royal city below. The silver light from the royal city illuminated the sky, and it shook the entire medium-sized world. Even the void outside the medium-sized world was shaken. On the ball of light, a black line stretched out, and it extended out of the medium-sized world as though it was connected to something. Lin Feng knew in his heart that it was connected to the spell altar. He looked at the Yudu great demon in the lead, and even with the barrier of the world, he could still feel an extremely dangerous aura from its body. Lin Feng's expression was calm as he stared at the Yudu great demon. He saw a hint of a cold smile on the corner of the Yudu beast's mouth. Its eyes flashed, and it seemed to be looking at Lin Feng. This was within Lin Feng's expectations. From the moment he could see the sight of this medium-sized world, he knew he had also fallen into the enemy's line of sight. His sneak attack on the spell altar had already been discovered by the other party. Even though I don't know who you are, you seem to have obtained some inheritance from Brother Tianhai, Imperial Brother. The heavenly Tao demon scriptures you cultivate are extremely orthodox, and you seem to have reached a certain level. However, I have to thank you. The Yudu beast suddenly spoke human language, and its voice could be heard clearly by Lin Feng. Before it could even finish speaking, the spell altar in front of Lin Feng's eyes changed. It suddenly turned from blurry to clear, and it transformed into a huge spell altar that was 30,000 yards tall. It was split into 11 layers, and tens of thousands of rays of light illuminated the entire void. A huge suction force was produced, and Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone, Battle God clone, and 9 Chi clone were all sucked in. They couldn't escape, and it was as though they were going to be fused into the spell altar. Meanwhile, the pillar of light above the spell altar gradually turned into a black line, and it was actually the same as the black line on the Yudu beast's ball of light in the medium-sized world. Next, the spell altar actually started to break through the void, wanting to break through the boundary and land on the boundless world. It was obvious that the ritual had officially started to pull Yudu Royal City back to the boundless world. Chapter 1165. Lin Feng's 3 clones were sucked in by the spell altar at the same time, and the dazzling light kept on swaying in the void. The spell altar descended in one direction, and it was precisely where the Great Thousand Worlds were located. The bottom of the spell altar came into contact with the boundary of the Great Thousand Worlds, and cracks appeared in the void. White light flickered in the cracks, and it was precisely the unstable turbulence of the boundary power that had gone out of control. The entire spell altar began to fuse with the Great Thousand Worlds, and at the top of the spell altar, a black line extended far into the void, guiding another colossal being. Lin Feng did not use the 2 worlds void technique to replace his original body. His Brontosaurus clone revealed his true form, and a true spirit divine rune appeared on his forehead. The huge dragon body began to become illusory, and at times, it was the body of a true dragon with majestic chi and blood, and at other times, it turned into a ray of light. Although the Brontosaurus clone was sucked in by the spell altar, it was only unable to escape, and it did not affect him from casting spells and divine arts. As the silver-white Brontosaurus let out a long roar, the dark void suddenly split open, and resplendent starlight appeared from within. It was as if a galaxy was right in front of him. The stars in the Milky Way had originally been revolving steadily according to the trajectory that had never changed since ancient times, But at this moment, it was as if they were being pulled by some kind of power, and the trajectory of the stars seemed to have changed. The change was so subtle that even a cultivator or a great demon would find it hard to detect it. However, how powerful was the power of the stars? Even the slightest change would produce boundless power. At this moment, this power was added to the body of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone. The Brontosaurus clone turned, and it was about to escape from the spell altar. However, the spell altar's light was profound and tyrannical, and it still firmly held onto the Brontosaurus clone. Even though this ritual was controlled by the great demon of central tribulation Yudu through the power of the world, it was still the remains of Yuhuang's celestial sea. In terms of power, it was much stronger than Brontosaurus's clone. Even if Brontosaurus's clone executed Battle Universe Reversal, it would still be hard for him to escape safely. However, Lin Feng's face showed no signs of surprise. The Cosmos Reversal technique suddenly reversed, and the huge force did not push the Brontosaurus clone away from the altar. Instead, it rushed towards the inside of the altar, going against the flow. Meanwhile, his clone of the Divine God of Battle and his clone of Nine Qi channeled their energy into the Lightning Dragon clone at the same time. Combine! The three doppelgangers shouted in unison, and a vast amount of purple qi was generated from their bodies. The three streams of purple qi gathered together and formed a human figure, which looked very similar to Lin Feng. Although it was illusory, a vast amount of magic power was emitted from it. This illusory figure also kept on changing its hand seals, and a Taiji diagram rotated on its forehead. In the depths of the Taiji diagram, there was a true spirit divine rune of the demon race flashing with light. The void trembled once again, and more starlight surged. The Cosmos Reversal technique, which was even stronger than the power of the Brontosaurus clone, was executed by this illusory figure, and it shook the star orbits even further. The starry sky also had an even stronger feedback, and it continued to strengthen the Brontosaurus clone. This power did not help the Brontosaurus clone escape from the spell altar. Instead, it sent him further into the depths of the spell altar. However, this boundless power shook off the purple qi that had wrapped around the Brontosaurus clone. Even though it was only for a short instant, it allowed the Brontosaurus clone to not be assimilated by the spell altar when he rushed into it. After executing the Cosmos Reversal technique, the three human figures formed by the purple qi gradually dissipated, and the eyes of the Brontosaurus clone flickered continuously with purple light. The silver-white huge dragon shuttled through the interior of the spell altar, and in an instant, it came to the center of the spell altar. Looking at the Yuda skeleton, the silver-white Brontosaurus suddenly opened its mouth and swallowed the skeleton in one gulp. The spell altar itself trembled, and the movement of merging into the boundless world suddenly stopped. The large amount of cracks in the boundaries under the spell altar also gradually healed. The black line that stretched out from the top of the spell altar changed its appearance, and it started to become a huge pillar of light again. The silver-white Brontosaurus didn't have it easy either. The silver-white scales on the dragon's abdomen had completely turned purple, and there was an extremely dazzling purple light pouring out from them. It illuminated the clone of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus until it was almost transparent. Its blood vessels and bones could be seen clearly, and it was as clear as colored glass. Meanwhile, the purple light was like a purple sun that shone continuously in the dragon's abdomen. From the abdomen of the Brontosaurus clone, a voice suddenly came out. Doing this will only make it easier for me to use the remains of Brother Tianhai, Imperial Brother, to refine you into my clone. Then, I can continue to execute the ritual more smoothly. From the voice, it was the great demon of Yudu that had gotten into the calamity. As he said that, Lin Feng had already discovered that the Yudu skeleton in the Brontosaurus clone's abdomen was extending out streams of light. They were like threads that stabbed into the flesh and blood of the Brontosaurus clone's abdomen, coating the clone in a layer of purple light from the inside out. The Yudu skeleton seemed to have come to life, and it started to gradually fuse into the flesh and blood of the Brontosaurus clone, fusing with the dragon bones of the Brontosaurus clone. The Brontosaurus clone gave off an unknown growl, and its appearance actually started to change. The dragon horns on its head disappeared, and instead, 3 horns that were the trademark of the Yudu race appeared. The huge dragon body started to change, and it gradually changed into a human form. However, it didn't change into the human form of Lin Feng. A silver-white mane appeared on the back of the giant, and the original dragon tail didn't disappear. However, the dragon scales on the tail disappeared, and a large amount of silver-white fur appeared instead. It turned into a huge tail that looked like a wolf's tail. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone was actually changing into the appearance of a Yudu beast at this moment. This skeleton isn't your own after all, and the spell you are casting now is also being performed with a boundary between us. Lin Feng's battle god clone had a calm expression, and the 9-chi clone beside him also had a calm expression. If either of these two conditions weren't met, the outcome of today's matter might have been different. But it's a pity that there are no ifs. The last one to speak was actually the clone of Brontosaurus, which was gradually changing into the appearance of Yudu. However, his voice still belonged to Lin Feng. Before he even finished speaking, the battle god clone and the 9-chi clone raised their right palms at the same time, and they slashed at the Brontosaurus clone. Heavenly Realm Barrier. A mysterious barrier suddenly formed in the body of the Brontosaurus clone, and it instantly cut off the Yudu skeleton from refining the Brontosaurus clone. The skeleton and the dragon bones separated, and the threads that were connected to the flesh and blood of the dragon body were all severed. The silver-white mane on the surface of the Brontosaurus clone's body disappeared, and its appearance changed back from human form to dragon form. The 3 sharp horns on its head were gone, and the 2 horns that were unique to the dragon race reappeared. The purple light markings that covered its entire body also gradually disappeared, and only the dragon's abdomen still had large amounts of purple light flashing on the surface of its body. Stopping the other party's attempt at possession didn't mean that everything was fine for Lin Feng. The skeleton that the Brontosaurus clone had swallowed still had extremely powerful energy, and it seemed like it could explode at any time. The gaze of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone was calm and determined, and the light around its body flashed violently. The battle god clone and the 9-chi clone executed their spells together, and waves of magic power landed on the Brontosaurus clone. A leisurely voice came from the skeleton. "You're right. In that case, I'll come over." Lin Feng's heart stirred slightly. He knew that the other party didn't come with his true body, and cast the spell through the power of the world zone. It was the final test of his spirit sea. Now that he understood that the spirit sea no longer had any restrictions on him, he no longer had any worries. The spell altar that was gradually dissipating suddenly solidified again, and resonated with the skeleton inside the Brontosaurus clone. The spell altar instantly changed shape, and turned into a triangular vertebra, locking the 3 clones of Lin Feng inside. The glowing triangular vertebra froze the void and the surrounding space, as though it was a cage. Outside the triangular vertebra, the dark void in the distance started to tremble violently, as though the heaven and earth were collapsing. An extremely terrifying existence seemed to be descending. In Infinite Wasteland, Jade Capital Mountain was still facing off against the 12 Sacred Heavens' ingenious flower formation in the Spirit Abyss mountain range. On the mountain, the eyes of Lin Feng's true body flashed. In the void outside the realm, the battle god clone that was trapped in the triangular vertebra suddenly opened its mouth and sucked in a breath. A purple gas came out from the bodies of the Brontosaurus clone and the 9-chi clone. The purple gas was absorbed by the battle god clone, and in the next moment, the 3 clones all disappeared. The battle god clone was lured by Lin Feng's true body, and he forcefully broke through the world zone, and came to the side of the true body on Jade Capital Mountain in Infinite Wasteland. He also swept the Brontosaurus clone and the 9-chi clone back. However, the other party's methods were also extraordinary. The purple light flashed, and the triangular vertebra that froze the heavens actually followed and suppressed the 3 great clones. In Lin Feng's mind, the appearance of the medium-sized world where the Yudu race resided appeared again. In the sky above Yudu Royal City, the strongest Yudu beast looked at him across the endless void, and its gaze became slightly more serious. "Your methods are extraordinary. How do I address you?" The Yudu beast looked at Lin Feng silently. Lin Feng said indifferently, "I'm the master of Xian Gate, Lin Feng." "I wonder who you are?" The Yudu beast said. "My name is Yudu 12 Illusory Sunday." He looked at Lin Feng. We will meet again very soon. Both sides clashed, and in the end it was a draw. He cast his spell through the power of the world zone, and Lin Feng's true body didn't descend. Lin Feng had destroyed his ritual to bring Yudu Royal City back to the Great Thousand, and he had suppressed the 3 clones of Lin Feng. Before he could rush over and reactivate the ritual, Lin Feng had brought the skeleton and his clones back to his true body. However, the seal he had used on the 3 clones of Lin Feng was still there, and if Lin Feng wanted to resolve it, he wouldn't be able to complete it in a short period of time. The last exchange between both sides ended there. Lin Feng looked at the shrunken triangular vertebra in his palm, and he fell into deep thought. Illusory Sun Yudu. Yudu 12 Illusory Sun. The 12th clan master of the Yudu race? The spell altar erected by the skeleton of Yuhuang Tianhai has 11 layers. Is it Yudu 11 heavenly seas? At the same time, in another world far away from the Spirit Abyss Mountain, a hole suddenly appeared in the void. As white light shone, a crack was forcefully torn open in the world of the vast 1,000 realms by a mighty expert. Chapter 1166. After the initial battle, the human experts quickly launched a counterattack. The flames of war spread from the Divine Land to Infinite Wilderness Land. The battlefield was mainly focused on the territory of the demon race. In the war between the 2 worlds, the situation was chaotic. Everyone was fighting for everything they wanted with their own abilities. Most of the previous scruples and order were thrown to the back of their minds. When experts with higher cultivation levels fought against those with lower cultivation levels, it would often result in a massacre. However, the higher the cultivation level, the fewer the number of experts. It was easier for them to be in a stalemate with each other, to the point of eventually exchanging pieces. Although the war between the 2 worlds was extremely chaotic, it did not mean that the top experts had completely lost their minds. Under such circumstances, the battles between the middle and lower level experts with slightly lower cultivation levels would be more intense. Violent battles were everywhere in other places, avoiding the battlefields of the top experts. On Infinite Wasteland, the domain passageway that connected to the southern border of the divine land of the human race had been completely occupied by the experts of the human race. A large number of experts of the human race poured into Infinite Wasteland and launched attacks on the demon race world, occupying some grotto heavens and blessed lands. Although they might not be able to occupy it for long, the spirit chi and various precious resources contained in it could be swept away. Relying on these front lines, the experts of the various forces of the human race continued to expand in all directions. From then on, they continued to head east for 10,000 kilometers and arrived at the entrance of Infinite Wilderness Land that led to a medium-sized world. Looking through the realm passage, they could see volcanoes erupting under the gloomy sky, lava flowing out, and wild winds howling. The interior of the entire medium-sized world was covered in a layer of misty green light, exuding a strong ferocious aura. A large number of human cultivators were attacking the medium-sized world. Although the spirit chi fluctuations were ferocious, there were many unique special resources in such an environment, such as spirit plants and minerals. In this medium-sized world, there were demons living there. They could not evacuate in time and were stuck there, fighting with the human cultivators. These demons were shaped like tigers. They had long fur, human faces, tiger feet, pig teeth, and long tails. They were ferocious, stubborn, and cruel, which was quite similar to the medium-sized world. This demon was actually one of the 4 primordial fierce beasts, Bayan. This dimensional realm was one of the habitats occupied by the Bayan. The Bayan that was younger and had a lower cultivation was protected by several Bai, and kings using their monster strength. Then these Bayan kings followed the Bai, and kings that had formed their nascent souls and rushed out of this dimensional realm. There was even a Swanni amongst them that had shockingly attained an indestructible demon soul. However, it had suffered a heavy injury earlier, so it was difficult for it to utilize its strength at this moment. But even so, its ferocious demonic power and powerful physical body made the Yuanying stage cultivators very afraid. Under the leadership of the great Saint Taowu, a group of Taowu forcibly broke through the entrance of the domain passageway and was ready to escape into the distance. They didn't have any thoughts of defending this dimensional realm. More and more human powerhouses were setting foot in the vicinity. Once they provoked a primordial spirit powerhouse of the human race, or even more Yuanian cultivators, this dimensional realm would eventually fall. Most of the human cultivators besieging this place were cultivators of the Great Qin dynasty. At this moment, seeing these Baian break through the encirclement, they were helpless. Killing these Bai would bring them a harvest that was not inferior to the dimensional realm that had been developed for a long time, and was gradually becoming barren. However, the other side had an indestructible demon soul Baian as its leader. Even if the other side was seriously injured, if they wanted to kill it, they would have to pay a huge price, and they might even be buried with the other side. This caused the human cultivators to inevitably feel hesitant. But at this moment, a sword light suddenly flashed in the distant sky. The sword light arrived first, and then there was a thunderclap. The sword light was like a thunderbolt. In an instant, it arrived outside this dimensional realm. The thunderous sound of thunder resounded, causing everyone present to black out and almost faint. The Baian's demon souls were even more unstable, and on the verge of collapse. The resplendent lightning and sword light fused as one. Without saying a word, it slashed at the Bai, and that had an indestructible demon soul. Lao Ai let out a loud roar, and the green light around his body surged to resist the sword light. However, he was seriously injured, and it was beyond his power to deal with this new and troublesome enemy. The sword light exploded like a thunderbolt, and the green light around his body was also blown to pieces. After all, the Baian was fierce and its demon power was stubborn. It was difficult to get rid of it when it was used to attack, but it could produce an extremely strong defensive power when it was used to defend. Although the Baian was seriously injured, it did not die after being struck by such a ferocious sword light that seemed like divine punishment from the heavens. And what appeared in front of him was a man who looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He held a long sword surrounded by lightning. It's Ben Lazy of the Thunderbolt Sword Sect. A cultivator of the Great Qin dynasty immediately recognized the person. He was another Essence Soul Sword cultivator in the Thunderbolt Sword Sect besides the Sect Master, Thunderbolt Sword Venerable Ben Lazy. Although it hadn't been long since he became a Essence Soul, his magical powers and sword cultivation were not to be underestimated. There was a deep grudge between the Thunderbolt Sword Sect and the Baian tribe. At this moment, Ben Lazy's sword was merciless. Every strike of his sword released a bolt of lightning that could split the heavens and split the earth. A demon king Baian could not dodge in time, and was directly turned to ashes by Ben Lazy's fierce and violent sword light. The Baian tribe had previously attacked the southern border of the Great Qin dynasty, through the realm passageway. Now that the Great Qin dynasty saw that they had a chance to encircle and annihilate them, they naturally did not hold back and hurriedly followed to eliminate the Demon King Baian. In the distance, there were still lightning sword lights flashing. When they neared, they saw that it was the Yuanian cultivators of the Thunderbolt Sword Sect who had followed Ben Lazy here. Everyone attacked together. Bolts of lightning surrounded the surroundings, forming a lightning cage that surrounded the Baian. The Baian roared angrily and resisted with all their might. Ben Lazy cut off one of the great sage Baian's hind legs. When he was about to attack again, his expression suddenly changed, and he looked at the ground below. In the process of the battle, the ground which had already been broken apart, suddenly shook violently. The huge earthquake caused the entire wasteland to be completely abandoned and shattered. However, under the broken ground, a ferocious demonic power soared up to the sky, directly sweeping away all the lightning in the world. An extremely ferocious monster snake rushed out from the ground. It had 1 head, 2 bodies, 6 legs, and 4 wings. It was a fae. When the fae appeared, the world instantly became dry. All the water evaporated, causing all the human cultivators present to feel suffocated. Ben Lazy's expression changed slightly. A fae of the primordial true spirit realm. However, this fae did not have much time to care about Ben Lazy and the Baian. Instead, it was focused on escaping into the distance. However, its sudden appearance caught everyone off guard. Under its rampage, its violent demonic power swept across, directly injuring many Yuanian cultivators present. Some Yuaniing cultivators who happened to be in its way were directly swallowed by its demonic power. Their flesh and blood were all dried up and evaporated. Their divine soul and Yuaniing were like cracked porcelain that was roasted and shattered together. Even Ben Lazy only had time to protect some of the sword cultivators of the Thunderbolt sword sect. But when the Fae's demonic power swept across, he was also shaken back and his primordial spirit became unstable. The Fae fled. Behind it, two streams of light also rushed out from the ground. One of them was a black sword light meandering like a black river, following closely behind the Fae. The one who merged with the sword light was a middle-aged man in black, wearing a crown and an embroidered robe. He was completely composed of light and shadow. It was King Jingfang of the Great Qin dynasty, Shilin. He had manifested his void return Dharma body, and was driving the Black River Sword, a transformation-level magic treasure, to chase after the Fae. The person with him was a void return realm expert of the Heavenly Sword sect. Using the Great Way Heavenly Sword sect, he was faster than Shilin, and caught up with the Fae in the blink of an eye. Shilin also followed closely behind. Together with the great sword cultivator of the Heavenly Sword sect, they launched a pincer attack to kill this Fae of the primitive true spirit level. Those by ANS were not in their line of sight. But with their powerful magic power, perhaps they might be wary of Ben Lazy and the others of the human clan. But they still swept those by ANS into pieces. The already fierce battle instantly escalated. The wind and clouds in the sky changed. The ground below had collapsed into a huge basin, and cracks appeared in the sky. Whether it was Ben Lazy and the others or those by ANS, they could not care about the battle anymore and hurriedly avoided it. But at this moment, at the place where King Jingfang of the Great Qin dynasty was fighting with the Fae, the void suddenly shattered, and the domain of the vast thousand world was forcibly torn open. The entire world was like a painting that had been torn apart by someone from the outside. The Fae and the expert from the Heavenly Sword sect happened to be at the position of the gap. Before they could even react, the space where they were was torn apart, and their bodies were torn apart along with the gap. Shilin, who was a little further away, opened his eyes wide, but he could only stare dumbfoundedly at the two experts of the same realm as him being killed just like that. Before they could struggle, resist, be angry, or panic, they were torn apart along with the vast thousand world. In the crack, the sky was full of purple light, which swallowed the bodies of the Fae and the expert of the Heavenly Sword sect, and dyed the world within a radius of thousands of miles purple. Within the range of the purple light, all creatures, whether human or demon, felt a tremor from the depths of their souls, and could not help but shiver. Under the shroud of the purple light, many tall figures slowly walked out of the crack. As they landed, the surrounding world seemed to tremble, and the purple light became more and more domineering and majestic. Near the crack, there were cultivators or demons with lower cultivation, who were shown by the purple light, and their bodies were shattered into a mist of blood. Those tall figures seemed to be unaware of this, and they just looked down at the vast land of infinite region, and the vast thousand world. The most powerful existence in the lead whispered, "Vast thousand world, we are back." Chapter 1167. Shilin and Ben Lazy looked at everything that was happening in front of them in shock. The boundary of the boundless world was forcefully torn apart, and the crack seemed to surpass countless divine weapons in the world. It cut the Fae of the primordial true spirit realm, and the great sword cultivator of the Heavenly Sword sect of the refined spirit returning realm into two. Light filled the sky from the crack, and the existences that walked out made them feel an irresistible terror from the depths of their souls. They all looked like humans, but they had triangles on their heads and sharp teeth that resembled dragons and wolves. Their backs were covered in long silver-white fur, and a large tail dragged behind them. Their skin was covered in purple runes. This image was very unfamiliar to everyone present. They had never seen such beings with their own eyes. But after a moment of astonishment, a name that made their hearts heavy appeared in the depths of everyone's memories. Yudu. This race that had once ruled over the vast land of infinite wasteland, and suppressed the great heaven primordial world, had returned to the world after disappearing for 4,000 years. The strongest Yudu beast in the lead stood upright like a human. It had a medium build, and its gaze was calm as it swept across the vast world in front of it. It was the new clan master of the Yudu race, Mirage Yudu. Just by standing there calmly and doing nothing, he seemed to be the center of the entire world. He didn't intentionally show his power, but neither did he intentionally hide it. All the strong practitioners on the vast land of Infinite Wasteland could feel his existence and were shocked. Even in the mysterious sea, there seemed to be several consciousnesses trembling slightly. The top strong practitioners on the divine land could also vaguely feel this shocking power suddenly descending on the world. Behind Sun Mirage Yudu, there were 3 Yudu beasts standing side by side. They all stood upright like humans. 2 of them were taller, while the other one was skinnier. All of them had calm expressions. They seemed to have turned a blind eye to Sherlin, Ben Lazy, and the others, as well as some Tawu in front of them. Just like Sun Mirage Yudu, they used their gazes to size up the world around them. Behind these 3 nether capital beasts, there were a few other nether capital beasts standing in front and behind. They were also sizing up the world of Tianhuang mainland, and the gazes of these nether capital beasts were much more domineering and passionate. Some nether capital beasts' gazes were filled with emotions and nostalgia, while others were filled with curiosity. But without exception, the gazes of all of Yudu were filled with aggression. Their gazes seemed to have solidified into substance, wanting to burn the world in front of them. Behind these Yudu beasts, there were other Yudu beasts that slowly walked out from the crack. Their cultivations were slightly lower, but all of them had surging demonic chi on them. They were peerlessly tyrannical, and it was a ghastly sight to behold. Sherlin and Ben Lazy didn't even have the time to carefully size up these Yudu beasts. After realizing who they were, they didn't even look back as they fled into the distance. But they didn't have this chance. Their coincidental appearance here today had already determined their fates. Mirage Sun Yudu and the 3 Yudu beasts beside him did not react at all. However, a Yudu beast in the crowd behind them stretched out its claws and grabbed at the air. Purple light surged and engulfed the world, directly capturing Sherlin and Ben Lazy. As for the other surviving human cultivators whose cultivation base had not reached the nascent soul realm, under the pressure of his demonic power, they were also directly turned into a mist of blood. None of them survived. The human cultivators here all belonged to the Great Qin dynasty and the Thunderbolt Sword sect. When Sherlin and Ben Lazy saw this, they couldn't help but be enraged. However, their rationality told them that escaping was the most important thing right now. However, when he was grabbed by the Yudu beast's claws, Ben Lazy was instantly unable to move. The sword lights that were like lightning around him were like insignificant sparks, extinguishing once again before they could even light up completely. Ben Lazy was completely unable to maintain his human form. Under the pressure of the other party's demonic power, he directly manifested his primordial spirit incarnation, transforming into a long sword that was surrounded by lightning. As for the Yudu beast, it opened its mouth and sucked in his treasure, a spirit-nurturing level sword, and swallowed it in one gulp. Countless bolts of lightning exploded in the Yudu beast's mouth, but it didn't care at all. On the other side, Sherlin executed his Void Return Dharma body, and completely fused with the Black River sword, which was a transformation-level treasure. His entire body twisted like a long black river, and in the long river, a black light dragon stretched out. When the Yudu beast saw this, it couldn't help but laugh. "I've eaten a real dragon before, much less a fake one like you." The purple light markings on its claws surged, and swept up the long black river along with the black light dragon. Then, the purple light transformed into millions of runes that spun continuously in the sky like a huge whirlpool. As the whirlpool stirred, it shattered the long black river and the light dragon. The Yudu beast opened its mouth and sucked, and the shattered black light transformed into a line that was sucked into the Yudu beast's mouth. The other Yudu beast beside him said indifferently, "Swallow the treasures as you like, but leave the primordial spirits of the humans behind. We've returned to the boundless world, and our information is severely lagging behind. If we want to extract information from their souls, one more person means one more piece of information." The Yudu beast that had attacked said, "Of course." After saying that, it opened its mouth and spat out a human figure. It was Sherlin's primordial spirit, But Shirlin's void returned Dharma body had shattered, and the Black River sword was nowhere to be seen. Shirlin's face was ashen as he was squeezed in the claws of the Yudu beast along with Ben Lazy. After a short while, astonishment appeared on the Yudu beast's face. A few top practitioners of the Yudu race turned their heads to look at him. The Yudu beast said firmly, "The strongest practitioner of the dragon race now is the Tenryu Gen, who has successfully experienced a calamity. It's still uncertain if he has completely recovered from his weakened state. Other than the heavenly devil ape from back then, there's also the Zhuyan devil ape and the enchantress, whose origins are still a mystery. The only known demons in the Last Days realm are the phoenix in the Wutong forest, as well as golden cicada under extreme spirit of the divine abyss, heavenly dragon Kuan of the dragon race, and the 10,000 laws heart ape that has suddenly appeared. Now is the time of the war between the two worlds, and Taishu Temple has taken the initiative to bring the Haotian mirror into the mysterious sea. They are currently fighting with the dragon race in the mysterious sea," Mirage Sun Yudu said calmly. "I can faintly feel that the Haotian mirror isn't in the boundless world, so it has entered the mysterious sea," that Yudu beast continued to say. "In the recent years, a strong practitioner has suddenly risen in the human race, and his name is Master of Xian Sect. He has established Xianmen Tianzong, and now he is a power that can rival Taishu Temple in the Divine Land." The gazes of all the Yudu beasts flickered, and they recalled what had happened previously. Mirage Sun Yudu nodded his head. "He's indeed not a simple person. He has arrived at the Spirit Abyss Mountain of the Monkeys, and he is currently facing off against the two monkeys and that heavenly enchantress." This Yudu beast continued to say, "What we need to pay attention to the most is that he has a sword called Heaven Punishment. It's said that he can face off against the incomplete Haotian mirror, but he has never used it against the enemy. As for its exact abilities, there are still doubts." A tall and big Yudu beast beside Mirage Sun Yudu grinned. "No wonder he can block those monkeys at Spirit Abyss Mountain." Beside him stood a Yudu beast that was relatively small and skinny. He was even smaller than most Yudu beasts on Union of Star Souls realm and Primordial True Spirit realm. However, with every breath he took, his demonic energy shook heaven and earth, and no one dared to look down on him. This Yudu beast looked at Mirage Sun Yudu. "What are you prepared to do? Are you going to participate in the war between the two worlds?" Mirage Sun Yudu said silently, "Return to King City first. Someone needs to hold down the fort there." That Yudu beast that was much smaller and skinnier didn't feel that anything was wrong. His originally slightly furrowed brows relaxed, and he nodded his head. He turned around and returned to that crack, and it gradually closed up. Mirage Sun Yudu took a step forward and broke through the void, vanishing into the horizon. The great demons of Yudu behind him roared at the sky and followed closely behind him, disappearing into the void. The wasteland that had been fighting intensely not long ago suddenly quietened down. The purple light in the world had also dissipated, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. The humans and demons that had been fighting endlessly a moment ago had all disappeared, as if dust had been blown away. Far away in space, in another region of infinite wasteland, there was a huge cloud of light floating in the sky. On the cloud of light, there were many strange pavilions. This was where the ruler of the great Qin dynasty, Qin Emperor Stonefeather, had personally led his troops to conquer infinite wasteland. Qin Emperor Stonefeather stood there with a solemn expression as he looked into the distance. That direction was where King Jingfang had fought with the Fei. Even though he was far away, Stonefeather, who was in infinite wasteland, could clearly feel the waves of demonic energy that shook the world. His heart sank. His younger brother, Shirlin, had most likely met with misfortune. Previously, after receiving the news from Lin Feng that the Yudu race might return to the boundless worlds, Stonefeather's heart had actually started to be on guard. While instructing the Divine Prefecture to be on guard, he also ordered the great Qin cultivators who were spread out to consciously return. King Jingfang Stonefeather was actually on his way back when he suddenly encountered the battle between the strong practitioners of the Heavenly Sword Sect and the Fei, so he helped along the way. King Onliang Stone Zongyue stood beside Qin Emperor Stonefeather and said solemnly, "Your Majesty, some of them are scattered to attack the medium-class worlds and the subordinates of the foreign dimension outside the boundless worlds. It's inconvenient to contact them. At the same time, their cultivation is lower, so it will take some time for them to rush back after receiving the warning. Stone Feather said slowly, communication with Brother Lin has been cut off. Uncle, you should have felt that wave of demonic energy just now, right? Shi Zongyue's expression was solemn as he nodded slowly. Stone Feather looked into the distance and said slowly, the news from the master of Xian Gate is accurate. The Yuta race has really returned to the world, and their strength is astonishing. It's hard to predict what they will do next. We should first stabilize our position and observe. Shi Zongyue bowed and replied, Your Majesty is wise. After a moment of silence, Stone Feather suddenly said, Summon Nebula to Infinite Wasteland and come to me. Nebula? Shi Zongyue was slightly surprised, but he didn't ask further and agreed respectfully. At the same time, all the human forces were shocked. Thinking of Lin Feng's previous warning, they all stopped in their tracks and paid close attention to the development of the situation. Chapter 1168. The Heaven Primal World was filled with the flames of war. There were battles between peak experts, but in places where they could not reach, there were many battles of lower levels that were even more intense and bloody than the Heaven Primal Worlds, where they were currently in full swing. In a foreign dimension, black shadows fluttered about in the sky while emitting deafening buzzing sounds that connected together into a deafening expanse. Huge, strange insects were flying in the air. They looked like huge beetles, with the largest being the size of a small mountain, and the smallest being the size of a water tank. These strange beetles were known as black scorpions. They were completely black, but a long tail extended from the end of their huge abdomen. It was segmented, with the tip forming a hook, like the tail of a scorpion. As these black scorpions danced in the air, there was a thick, bloody light circling around them. A large number of black scorpions gathered together, like a wave that blotted out the sky, pressing down on a mountain not far away from the entrance to the foreign dimension. Rings of light suddenly lit up on the mountain, enveloping the entire mountain. Each ring of light was formed from flickering white talisman characters, forming a ring. The talisman characters constantly flowed, and the rings of light constantly revolved as well. They gave off a perfect and flawless concept of power, forming a powerful defense. On the mountain stood a purple-clothed young man of medium build. His clothes were embroidered with a taiji symbol, and there were 3 black horizontal lines on his sleeves, the same as the Qian trigram. This young man was none other than Xianmen Tianzong, the second-generation head of the Heaven Palace's direct disciples, Yang Tai. He was now a Yuanian cultivator, and some of his disciples had already condensed a golden elixir. When he walked outside, many people had to respectfully address him as true Lord Tiantai. He used Xianmen Tianzong's direct disciple, the Heaven-returning Law Realm, and its defensive power was astonishing. Although the black scorpions outside were mostly demon commanders who had condensed their demon cores, there were hundreds and thousands of them. Their numbers were enough to cause a qualitative change, and there were even demon kings who had condensed their demon nascent. However, Yang Tai's expression was calm. He used his abilities to firmly protect the mountain beneath his feet, stopping the enemy's attacks. Beside him, the group of Qiantian Palace true disciples all unleashed their own methods to attack the black scorpions. Although the black carapace of the black armored scorpion had good defensive power, facing Sun Shuer and the other direct disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, they were unable to resist. In a short period of time, it was as if they were being cut wheat. Sun Shuer stood beside Yang Tai. Her eyes were ice blue. Her left hand pinched a spell in front of her chest. Her right index finger and thumb clasped together, and her other 3 fingers formed a knife. She slashed at the swarm of insects in the air. Water vapor that looked like ice appeared in the void, and snow began to fall from the sky. The entire world seemed to have taken on an icy blue hue. The temperature in the air dropped rapidly. Even the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong beside Sun Shuer, whose cultivation base was slightly lower, felt chills. The power activated by Sun Shuer was one of the 6 great true waters in the world, the extremely cold Xianming true water. Unlike the Xianming true water that was activated by the Yu clan's Xianming art in the past, Sun Shuer activated the Xianming True Water at this moment. The ice mist that was formed, aside from the extremely cold power, was even more profound in its foundation, and its power was even more vast. Sun Shuer's hand slashed across the sky. It was as if a rainbow formed from condensed ice souls was spread across the sky, emitting a seven-colored radiance. Many of the black armored scorpions were directly frozen by this ice rainbow. The originally tyrannical aura in their eyes immediately dimmed, and what was gradually extinguished was the brilliance of their lives. The Xianmen Tianzong disciples who were allowed to participate in the war between the two realms, at least before the situation was completely clear, were at least at the core formation stage. For them, although these black armored scorpions were ferocious, the black armored scorpions in the Demon Commander realm were not enough to be afraid of. The only problem was that the opponents' numbers were too large. Their attacks were like endless waves, and they pounced on them from all directions at the same time, causing them to be overwhelmed. In a situation like this, it was often impossible to counter every move, and it was impossible to carefully search for the opponent's weaknesses like in a normal battle. The most dangerous part was that when you defeated 1, 2, or even more opponents, it did not mean that you had won. It was very possible that in that instant, even more enemies would pounce on you and drown you. Or perhaps in a battle that seemed to be unrelated to you, one side would dodge, and the other side's attack that missed would suddenly appear in front of you, bringing the threat of death to you. All sorts of dangers were everywhere, and they were often unexpected and impossible to guard against. However, for these Xianmen Tianzong cultivators, they were not fighting alone. Beside them were fellow disciples or seniors of the same sect. They could leave their rear and flanks to these trustworthy people. They only needed to focus on dealing with the enemies in front of them, and quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly kill the enemies in front of them. If they were careless, other enemies would take advantage of it, and these enemies would often be killed by their companions before they could even get close. However, there was no doubt that the situation was changeable and chaotic. In this place, everyone needed to be more focused and sharper. At this moment, Yang Tai's expression was calm and natural. He completely gave up on attacking and focused on defending. With him at the forefront, there were also a few Golden Elixir late-stage and Golden Elixir middle-stage cultivators among the second-generation direct disciples who were focusing on the Black Armored Scorpion King in the opponent's camp. This naturally reduced the pressure on the others. Under such circumstances, Yang Tai, Sun Shuer, and the others were also happy to let the other Xianmen Tianzong disciples hone their skills and increase their experience and strength. Among the third-generation disciples, Yuan Yu and Yuan Li are both performing well. Sun Shuer waved her right hand, and an ice rainbow crossed the sky, directly freezing an early-stage Demon King Black Armored Scorpion King. She slightly tilted her head and looked at Yang Tai. Yang Tai nodded. Although still a little immature, they are improving very quickly. The third-generation direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong were all Yuan generation. Yuan Yu and Yuan Li were Yang Tai's direct disciples, and their Taoist names were Yi Xinhui and Su Miaoying respectively. Yi Xinhui's hair and beard were all snow white. He formed a seal with his hands, and his whole body was also flashing with snow-white brilliance. This brilliance actually faintly formed the shape of a treasure tree in the void. Although the crown of the tree was not large and only covered a radius of a few dozen feet, from this snow-white treasure tree, there were constantly snowflake-like lights floating down, flying in all directions, landing on the other cultivators of the celestial sect of Xian, making the degree of their magic power circulation more convenient. In a real battle, even the slightest difference could bring about a huge change. Although Yi Xinhui did not attack, the overall effect on the battle situation was faintly more effective than the effect of an early-stage Golden Elixir disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. The martial uncles and senior and junior brothers beside him were clearly prepared. They firmly protected Yi Xinhui, so he did not have to be distracted. As for Su Miaoying, when she fought, it was easy for Yang Tai and Sun Shuer to see Su Yunqing's shadow in her. Stable but not lacking in sharpness, she had few flaws, and was both good at offense and defense. Even in this obviously chaotic environment, she was still meticulous. She took one step and looked 3 steps ahead. And when it was necessary to fight fiercely, She did not lack courage and determination. She was decisive and knew when to advance or retreat. Compared to Su Yunxing in the past as a woman, Su Miaoying's style was even more radical. Her facial features were at least 70% similar to Su Yunxing's. Her handsomeness had turned into elegance, but her eyes were firm and resolute, with a hint of stubbornness. Sun Xuan'er smiled faintly. She doesn't want others to take care of her because of senior brother Yunsheng. Senior brother Yunsheng has been away for many years, which has accumulated a lot of doubts in her heart. However, these doubts have turned into expectations and motivation. This is all the result of your careful teaching, Tai. Yang Tai shook his head slightly. It is the result of Yuan Ying's own hard work. I dare not take credit for it. Sun Xuan'er looked to the other side. Speaking of which, although Yuan Yu and Yuan Ying's cultivation is not ordinary, among the third-generation direct disciples of our Qiantian Palace, Yuan Xing is still the first. Although senior brother Ing Luoz's teaching method is criticized, the results are indeed remarkable. There was a young woman with a cold expression. She was dressed in purple, and she was Ing Luoz's disciple, Meng Honglu. Among the third-generation direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, she was the first to form her gold core. Because she was the first to form her gold core, her Taoist name was originally Yuanchu. Later on, under Meng Honglu's own request, her Taoist name was changed to Yuanxing, which implied that knowledge and action were one, and that what she said must be done. She had always kept her initial goal of becoming the first person among the third-generation direct disciples in mind. Looking at the black scorpions dancing in front of her, Meng Honglu suddenly pulled back the large bow in her hand, and with a backward posture, she released an arrow. A burst of starlight suddenly shot out, exploding in midair. It was as if a group of stars had fallen, covering the heaven and earth, killing more than 10 black scorpions at once. This was a special reward she had received from the sect as the first person to form her gold core in the third generation. It was a Yuanying realm magic tool, the meteor bow. With a single arrow, it was extremely destructive against demon commanders. This bow was very mysterious, and it was very difficult for golden elixir period cultivators to control it. However, in Meng Honglu's hands, it was like an extension of her arm. A black scorpion suddenly approached her from the other side. Meng Honglu held the bow with one hand, and her posture did not change. She suddenly stretched out her other hand, easily grabbing the black scorpion's tail, and swung it with force. As the black scorpion lost its balance, the giant bow in her left hand chopped down like a large knife, directly killing the black scorpion. Meng Honglu's expression did not change. She casually threw away the black scorpion's corpse, and then pulled the meteor bow again. Yang Tai glanced at her, and sighed slightly. It cannot be popularized, and I have no intention of popularizing it. Hearing this, Sun Xuan's face also revealed a slightly bitter smile. At this moment, the swarm of insects in the distance suddenly became restless. A violent force shattered the void, and a black light flashed, instantly stabbing a black scorpion king that had formed its demon infant to death. In the midst of the chaos, the swarm of insects hurriedly diverted their attention to deal with the new enemy. Yang Tai and Sun Xuan'er looked at each other, and they could not help but smile. Chapter 1169. A spot of black light flashed and stabbed a black scorpion king that had formed a demon infant to death. In the next moment, this spot of black light suddenly spread between heaven and earth and turned into a rain of light. Each dark and gloomy raindrop killed a black scorpion. In an instant, the black swarm of black scorpions was directly emptied. Even the fierce and fearless black scorpions lost their spirit and scattered to the side. A young man of medium stature, but with blood and chi surging all over his body like a furnace, appeared in the void, and appeared in front of everyone. He held a jet-black long spear in his hand, and his killing intent soared to the sky. The young man's appearance and temperament were not bloodthirsty and violent, but instead gave people a sense of calmness. When Yang Tai and Sun Xuan'er saw him, they both smiled and said, "Senior brother Zhao." The person who came was Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation Snow Wind Valley head, Zhao Huan. When Zhao Huan saw Yang Tai and Sun Xuan'er, he also smiled and said, We're a bit late than scheduled, sorry about that. Behind him were Kujing and the other Snowwind Valley true disciples. Each of them used their magical powers to kill the black scorpions that approached them. Most of the Snowgale Valley disciples were martial adepts, so they fought in close combat against the black armored scorpions. Other than Zhao Huan and a few others, most of the Snowgale Valley disciples only focused on one black armored scorpion at a time. At first glance, the efficiency seemed low, but wherever they passed through, the black armored scorpions would really die upon contact. The entire team was like a giant mill, crushing everything in its path, sweeping away everything in its path. Yang Tai shook his head and said, "It's okay, we'll wait for you here. Everyone can also go through some training." He looked at the swarm of black scorpions in front of him and said, "These black scorpions are not extraordinary individually, but their numbers are huge and they cooperate well. When they gather together, the threat is quite considerable." The black scorpions in front of them formed a vast sea of black scorpions that stretched as far as the eye could see. At this moment, the Xianmen Tianzong cultivators gathered here, and the people from Qiantian Palace and Snowwind Valley Cave abode added up to only a few dozen. With such a huge advantage in numbers, even the Xianmen Tianzong disciples had to be cautious. Zhao Huan and the others did not blindly charge forward after their initial irresistible force. Instead, they met up with Yang Tai and the others. The black scorpions regained their footing and quickly launched an even more ferocious attack. Zhao Huan had also entered the Yuanying state and stood side by side with Yang Tai. One attacked and the other defended, taking on the greatest pressure from the black armored scorpions in front of them. However, he mainly focused on the black armored scorpion kings, leaving the other black armored scorpions to the Xianmen Tianzong disciples in the Golden Elixir period to deal with. Everyone guarded this lonely mountain, seemingly isolated and defenseless, but the camp was firmly rooted and did not retreat even half a step. On the contrary, the black armored scorpions suffered heavy losses. Amidst the cries of the sea of insects, the red light grew thicker and thicker. More and more black armored scorpion kings appeared from afar, joining the ranks of the group that attacked Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others. Seeing this, Yang Tai was not surprised but smiled. This time, almost all of them have come out. As he spoke, the fierce offensive of the swarm suddenly retreated a little, and then a large number of demonic insects gathered together, as if forming a huge pattern. The red light on this pattern flowed, becoming more and more fierce. Sun Shuer shouted to Yang Tai, "Tai." Yang Tai nodded. "I know." As he spoke, he took out a small square shield, which was his Yuanying period magic tool, the defensive shield. The defensive shield lit up and at the same time, extended on all sides, condensing into 4 flashing white corners, making the whole shield look like an upright square. Then, another layer of light covered the shield, and continued to extend outwards, turning into a larger upright square. In this cycle, the light continued to expand, also making the shield bigger and bigger, covering the whole mountain behind it. Meanwhile, Yang Tai pinched a spell with both hands, and the central earth divine light and mixed element true water appeared at the same time. Then he put his hands together and turned into the central sealed realm of mixed element. The light was as heavy as the earth, and the light as vast as the ocean spread out, combining with the defensive shield to protect Xianmen Tianzong and the others. Sun Shuer and other disciples of the Qiantian Palace who had a higher cultivation base also activated the magical power of the defensive shield at the same time. Halos of light fell on the defensive shield. Almost at the same time, a bright red light shot out from the huge rune formed by the black armored scorpions. It instantly tore through the void and bombarded the defensive magic shield. The demon power of the many demonic insects combined, and the huge force blasted the defensive shield that was supported by the central sealed realm of mixed element, causing it to shake continuously. Yang Tai's expression was calm, and his eyes were firm as he supported the celestial device and spell. But Zhao Huan did not say much. White light shone on top of his head, and in the center of the white light was a shining crown. Above the crown, 2 shadows were projected, one of which was dignified and sacred, and the other was evil and domineering. This was the legacy celestial device of the Snowwind Valley's Yuanying stage, the ghost deity golden crown, given to him by Yu Hongyan. The black spear in Zhao Huan's hand was another Yuanying stage celestial device, the Heaven's Wrath Spear, given to him by Yu Hongyan as the second-generation true disciple. With the support of the ghost deity golden crown, Zhao Huan's power surged, and he was like a demon. The black Heaven's Wrath Spear in his hand shook, and he stepped on the void, moving from behind the defensive shield to in front of the swarm of insects. The 9 heavens' formless astral wind, which was as sharp as a blade, combined with the bone-chilling Xianming true water that froze the void. It turned into a snowstorm, and as Zhao Huan stabbed with his spear, it tore through the void, heading straight for the strange talisman formed by the swarm of insects. Wherever the tip of the spear passed, the air was heated up by the friction, and one could even see the sparks of fire. But almost at the same time, it was extinguished by the snowstorm. In this spear, there was only the bone-chilling coldness and the biting cold storm. Compared to the gigantic talisman that covered the sky and covered the sun, Zhao Huan and the Heaven Wrath Spear. The tip of the Heaven Wrath Spear seemed incomparably small, but as Zhao Huan stabbed forward, the void distorted as though it was about to shatter the entire talisman. The talisman formed by the swarm of insects immediately flashed with red light, forming a barrier in front of it to block Zhao Huan's spear. When Sun Shuer, who was behind the Heaven Reversal Shield, saw this, she immediately stopped the Heaven Reversal Realm Divine ability and took out a scroll. As the pages of the scroll flipped, a large amount of icy cold mist surged out. The icy blue water droplets were like spirits of ice. It was hard to count, and all of them were Xianming true water. Under Sun Shuer's control, the Xianming true water fused into Zhao Huan's Wind Snow Divine Spear. Zhao Huan did not stop it. He swept up Sun Shuer's Xianming true water, and he further activated the 9 heavens' formless astral wind. The acupoints all over his body vibrated, as if volcanoes were erupting. His powerful body's qi and blood were pushed to the extreme, and the power of the Wind Snow Divine Spear increased once again. With this ferocious attack, the corner of the huge talisman suddenly shattered. Although the black-armored scorpions did not suffer many casualties, the strange formation could not be maintained for a while. After Zhao Huan's spear attack, he flipped over and returned to Yang Tai's side. Yang Tai also smiled and put away the defensive heaven shield. After the black-armored scorpions suffered such a heavy blow, some of their spirits were immediately dampened, and some became even more violent, rushing towards Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others. But although they were violent, they were even less threatening than before. Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others relaxed again. They controlled the intensity of the black-armored scorpions' attacks, and then let their fellow disciples in the Golden Elixir period practice with these black-armored scorpions. Where is senior brother Ing Rosa? The long spear in Zhao Huan's hand turned into a black light, piercing through space, directly stabbing a black-armored scorpion king to death, and then asked casually. Yang Tai smiled slightly. To catch bandits, first catch the king. Senior brother Ing Rosa went to find the leader of this group of black-armored scorpions. After that incident just now, he should be found soon, right? In a swarm of black-armored scorpions, there would be a leader, but in this swarm of black-armored scorpions, there were no great sage demonic insects with indestructible demon souls. The strongest ones were the insect kings. The insect king leader was more cunning and good at concealing itself, suppressing a portion of its magic power. From the outside, it did not stand out, making it difficult to recognize. It seemed that the formation of the insect swarm just now was under the command of this leader. If the leader didn't die, even if the formation was temporarily defeated, it could quickly regroup. However, if the leader, the black-armored scorpion, was killed, even if another powerful black-armored scorpion became the new leader, it would take a long time to unify the swarm and establish a connection. Time was not tight, and in consideration of training their fellow disciples with lower cultivation bases, Yang Tai, Ing Rosa, and the others had let the insect swarm wreak havoc, but they still had to do what they had to do. Ing Rosa was used to being alone, and his escape technique, the wolf movement technique, was extremely exquisite. Other than being fast, he was also good at concealment, so he left the lonely mountain alone. Silently lurked, he observed the insect swarm, and went to find the insect king. In the overwhelming sea of insects, there were no special waves, and the numerous black-armored scorpions were actually unable to finding Rose's whereabouts. Zhao Huan shook her head and praised, "Senior brothering Rose's wolf movement technique is truly marvelous. This black-armored scorpion race must have at least a demonic insect with an indestructible demon soul to be able to see his whereabouts." As she spoke, Zhao Huan's expression suddenly changed slightly, and the expressions of Yang Tai, Sun Shuer, Kujing, and the others gradually became solemn. The Yudu race has returned to the boundless world. The younger disciples of Xianmen Tianzong all frowned slightly. Although none of them had truly seen the power of Yudu, as the direct disciples of the celestial sect of wonders, they naturally knew what this news meant. And Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan, who had informed them of the news, also gave the order to temporarily retreat and observe the subsequent changes. Although they could not be sure what the Yudu race would do when they returned to the boundless world, the younger disciples with lower cultivation still had to be careful. If they were not careful, they would be swept by the tail of the typhoon, and that would be too unjust. Zhao Huan and Yang Tai looked at each other and nodded. In that case, let's not waste time with these insects. Let's end this quickly. At the same time, a voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Then I'll make my move. This voice belonged to Ing Rosa, and before he finished speaking, a knife light shone in the distance. Chapter 1170. Rosa's voice suddenly rang out in everyone's ears, and with his voice, a bright blade of light suddenly flashed in the depths of the insect swarm in the distance. The blade of light was resplendent and bright, but it was not eye-catching, causing people to unwittingly overlook it. This contradictory quality was perfectly displayed on the blade of light. The blade of light was like a fleeting swan, disappearing in the blink of an eye. In the depths of the insect swarm, a huge black scorpion king let out a terrified howl. It wanted to dodge, but the blade of light locked onto it, making it impossible to dodge. As the scorpion king howled, many demon commander-level black scorpions involuntarily rushed up and clustered in front of it, wanting to block the sure-kill strike for it. However, the blade of light flashed again and again, passing through these black scorpions and accurately landing on the scorpion king. This black scorpion king was the leader of this swarm of insects. The moment before the blade of light arrived, it still wanted to gather the power of the insect swarm and condense a giant talisman to defend itself, but the blade of light was like mist and lightning. It was unbelievably fast, passing through space in an instant to kill it, giving it no time to react. Instinctively, the majestic demon chi that the Scorpion King had been hiding all this time erupted. It was indeed stronger than the other black Scorpion Kings. The thick red light almost condensed into a solid substance, wrapping around the Scorpion King like a thick layer of armor. The red light gradually condensed into a strange talisman, exactly like the talisman that the insect swarm had condensed earlier, except it was much smaller. However, at this moment, the talisman also revealed extremely powerful defensive power. However, all of this was just a final struggle before death. The blade of light was astonishing and disappeared in a flash. When the blade of light completely disappeared, the Black Scorpion King's body had already exploded with rays of bloody light. Its huge body had been directly pierced through, and both its demon body and demon soul had perished. Faced with this sudden change, the huge swarm of insects fell into a slight daze. The originally deafening buzzing sound also came to an abrupt stop at this moment, and there was a strange silence between heaven and earth. Amidst the swarm of insects, in an empty space surrounded by black-armored scorpions, a thick black smoke suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It rose into the sky like a mournful smoke signal. The black smoke gradually dissipated, revealing a dark-skinned and skinny young man whose facial features clearly bore the characteristics of a prairie native. He wore a purple tight suit and had a calm expression on his face, but his eyes clearly flashed with a dangerous light. He raised his right hand nonchalantly and opened his palm. A ray of light flashed in the void, and a pure black flying knife less than a foot long flew out from afar and returned to the young man's hand. The young man looked at the dead black-armored Scorpion King in the distance, and a faint sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. You're not much better than the other black-armored scorpion demon kings, but you're able to become an authoritative leader. Is it because of your bloodline and status? Or is it the nature of your race that you must have a leader? This young man was naturally Iroza. He had been hiding in the swarm earlier, surrounded by black-armored scorpions. Even when the swarm had formed a formation and condensed into a giant talisman, he had been included in it, but not a single black-armored scorpion had discovered his whereabouts. Now that they saw Iroza, the swarm fell silent for a moment, then suddenly became chaotic. It was both anger and panic after losing their leader. But at this moment, most of the black-armored scorpions rushed towards Iroza with monstrous momentum, like a tsunami that wanted to drown him. Iroza's expression was calm, without the slightest hint of panic. There was a faint sneer at the corner of his mouth as he calmly looked at the rampaging swarm in front of him. The moment his knife flashed, Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others on the lonely mountain also acted decisively without the slightest hesitation. Yang Tai no longer defended. Instead, he formed a spell with his left hand and pointed to the sky with his right hand. Suddenly, a black light flew into the sky. An extremely violent and ruthless aura surged in the void. As the black light flowed, it wrapped around a 7-inch-long black iron shuttle, which emitted waves of bloody killing intent. Yang Tai was the second-generation true seat of the Qiantian Palace. Zhu Yi had given him 2 Yuanying first seat magic treasures, one of which was used for defense, and the other was the Annihilation Shuttle. The Annihilation Shuttle was a further enhancement of Yang Tai's own magical power on the basis that he was good at defense. And this Annihilation Shuttle was specially used for frontal attacks. The only function of this treasure was to destroy and kill. Apart from that, it had no other uses. And its offensive and destructive power was among the top of all the Yuanying first seat magic treasures in the world. Yang Tai summoned the Annihilation Shuttle, formed a spell with his left hand, and with a wave of his right hand, an overwhelming black light swept towards the swarm of insects. One after another, black light exploded in the sky, killing black-armored scorpions one after another. When Yang Tai was still in the golden elixir period, the Annihilation Shuttle had great power. Now that he had formed his nascent soul, he could use this weapon to the fullest. The swarm of insects couldn't form a formation, so the weaker black-armored scorpions could only gather around the Insect King to resist. But as he summoned the Annihilation Shuttle, Yang Tai put his palms together and chanted, "Immeasurable light, immeasurable darkness, the beginning of the 2 poles, the creation of the heavens." Black and white light flew out with him as the center. The black and white light instantly turned into a huge altar that looked like a mandala flower, but was not a mandala flower. Countless bright and dazzling rays of light intertwined with countless dark and deep black lines, forming lines that looked like the orbit of the stars in the sky. Together, they weaved an independent small world. This was the light and dark mandala heavens boundary inherited from Zhu Yi. Under the oppression of this light and dark boundary, the situation of the black-armored scorpions became more and more difficult, and the lethality of the Annihilation Shuttle was further released. At the same time, Zhao Huan and the others did not stay idle. Everyone instantly turned from defense to offense. All kinds of powerful magical powers burst out with Lonely Mountain as the center, sweeping the surrounding heaven and earth, killing a large number of insects in front of them. Rosa, who was originally in the center of the swarm and facing the crazy counterattack of the black-armored scorpions, became the most relaxed person. He grinned and changed his hand gestures. With him as the center, magical power condensed into purple brilliance, manifesting in the void. Although it was light and shadow, it was very clear, as if it was real. As Rosa pointed his finger, the light on the 4 big ox hairs suddenly became dazzling, and then there were rays of light shooting in all directions, causing great damage to the black-armored scorpions with the momentum of a flower in the center, setting off a bloody storm. The black-armored scorpions with high cultivation did not lack intelligence. Although the sudden death of their leader caused them to fall into a short period of chaos, they quickly recovered. However, the black-armored scorpions of the Demon King realm all had their own mountains, causing the swarm to inevitably fall into a situation of division in a short period of time. It was difficult for them to work together like before. Although the swarm was divided and the size of each swarm was greatly reduced, if the leader could use his own demon power to unite with the demon insects under his command, they still had the power to fight. However, this needed time. And Yang Tai, Rosa, Zhao Huan, and the others obviously would not give these black-armored scorpions time. In just a moment, the divided swarm was like a receding tide, beginning to disperse in different directions. If it had been the original plan, Yang Tai and the others would have carried out a further hunt, as well as going deep into the foreign space in front of them to search for all kinds of resources. But now that they had received the magical power transmission from Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan, they no longer delayed. After killing the swarm of insects, they began to retreat from the foreign space. Rosa narrowed his eyes, revealing an expression of interest. The Yudu race? They have disappeared for more than 4,000 years, and now they have popped up again. Zhao Huan said from the side. This is Grandmaster's warning, it can't be wrong. Also, it is said that this generation's master of Yudu has already experienced the middle tribulation. There are also many other great demons of Yudu, and they are all extremely powerful. After a slight pause, Zhao Huan continued. According to Grandmaster's judgment, if we don't take into account the power of the Xianhai, the Yudu race's overall strength is above that of the dragon race. They are currently the strongest race in Tianhuang continent. Rosa had a faint smile on his face. In that case, we humans are not the only ones who should be concerned about them. The other demon races, such as the dragon race, will probably also feel a headache, right? Yang Tai said, that will depend on the specific situation. Although the demon races are wary of each other and view each other as enemies, it is not impossible for them to work together. There are also many silent tacit understandings in private. To the demon race, the incomplete Haotian mirror leaving White Cloud Mountain to enter the Xianhai is also an extremely rare opportunity. The dragon race has always been arrogant, so it is hard to predict what they will do in the future. As they spoke, they had already left the foreign dimension and returned to the boundless world. Zhao Huan said, no matter what, let's meet up with Master and Second Uncle Master first before we talk. Rosa asked, where are Master and Fourth Uncle Master now? Zhao Huan replied, they should have gone to chase after the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, but after receiving Grandmaster's warning, they stopped and are now returning to the Guxing Mountain area. The Guxing Mountain was a mountain range near the realm passage between the Divine Land and Tianhuang continent. It was originally a place where the demon race had gathered, but after the attack of the human cultivators, the demon race had all dispersed. Rosa's expression suddenly changed, and he turned to look at Yang Tai with a smile. If I remember correctly, fellow Taoists of Purple Cloud Dao should be near the Guxing Mountain, right? Yang Tai seemed to have thought of something, and there was an imperceptible wry smile on his face. Yes. Zhao Huan, Sun Shuer, and the other disciples of the same generation who were close to him also smiled. Sun Shuer said with a smile, I heard that senior sister Xiaolan is also here? The wry smile on Yang Tai's face became even more obvious. He nodded and said, yes, she is with Uncle Master Gu and Uncle Master Li. They are the only cultivators of the golden elixir period of Purple Cloud Dao who are participating in the battle, but they are mainly spectators and rarely participate in the battle. Uncle Master Gu and the others want to let senior sister Xiaolan and the others gain experience. Seeing his expression, the others finally realized that something was wrong and couldn't help but look at each other. Even Rosa had a curious look on his face. What's wrong with you? Chapter 1171. Seeing that Rosa, Zhao Huan, Sun Shuer, and the others were looking at him strangely, Yang Tai smiled bitterly and said, Senior sister Xiaolan is very headstrong. A few days ago, before the war between the two worlds started, we were chasing after the underworld hall cultivators together. At that time, some rumors between the disciples of other sects fell into senior sister Xiaolan's ears. Sun Shuer was a little surprised. What rumors? Rosa thought for a moment and sneered. They're probably slandering fellow Taoist Fang and trying to curry favor with him, right? Ha, there's no need to take such words to heart at all. Zhao Huan and Rosa looked at each other. and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Unlike Sun Xuer and Yang Tai, they were the first batch of disciples to join Xianmen Tianzong when the sect first opened its doors. At that time, Xianmen Tianzong was far from the power it had today. Even the relatively friendly forces who came to congratulate them were mostly only at the Yuanying stage, and there were very few primordial soul realm experts. For the vast land of the divine continent at that time, although some people were aware of the potential of the celestial sect of Xianmen, no one could have expected that this new force could reach this stage today. At least, no one had expected that Xianmen Tianzong would develop to its current scale in such a short time. From a newly established sect, it had become a giant in the divine land that stood side by side with the Taishu Temple in just a few decades. At that time, no one would think that Xianmen Tianzong's disciples had married the descendants of other forces, because they were trying to curry favor with them. The Great Qin dynasty's Prince Anliang, Shi Zongyue, had once proposed to Lin Feng's personal disciple, Yu Hongyan, for his grandson Shi Shaoqian. However, Yu Hongyan was not interested, and Lin Feng did not allow it, so the matter was left unsettled. Now naturally no one brought up this topic again. During the Desolate Sea Assembly, some of Shi Shaoqian's words and deeds were laughed off by the participants and no longer took it to heart. However, the world was ever-changing. The current Xianmen Tianzong was no longer what it used to be, and the change in its status compared to the other forces also made people sigh. As the head disciple of Zhu Yi, the master of the Qian Tian Hall of the Celestial Sect 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 of the Although he was not aggressive, his cultivation was recognized as one of the best among the second-generation disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. He was among the top 10, and he could even compete for the top 5. Although he was not He Tai Yang Tai and the Yen was He Tian He Tai Jin and family Tai and Yang, Hao and Jin, and Tai and In and Yang and One and Yang, and Hao and Ro and Chen and Tai and Yang and Ro. In other forces only the top geniuses could be mentioned in the same breath as him. Naturally, many people did not agree with this point of view, but there were more and more people who agreed in recent years. This was especially so as Xianmen Tianzong's disciples walked more and more in the divine land. Their achievements were solid, and they built a legend together. Hence, at some point, the issue of Xianmen Tianzong's disciples' cultivation partners also gradually attracted the attention of outsiders. Purple Cloud Path had always been Xianmen Tianzong's ally, and the two sides had always been close. Feng Shaolan's master, Gu Lei, was a good friend of Yang Tai's master, Zhu Yi. Gu Lei's wife, Li Kueyin, was very close to Shi Tianhao. Feng Shaolan was also the most outstanding person among the younger generation of cultivators in Purple Cloud Path. Not only Gu Lei and Li Kueyin, but even the Purple Cloud Path's elders also thought that Feng Shaolan would surpass her master, and that her future potential would surpass her master, Gu Lei. In the overall environment of the Divine Land, Feng Shaolan could also be considered a talent among the younger generation. However, the problem was that compared to Yang Tai, or to the top batch of disciples in Xianmen Tianzong, the gap was obvious. Some busybodies in the outside world had privately joked that it was fine if people like Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong, and the others did not find cultivation partners. If they wanted to find one, they could only find one in Taishu Temple. Perhaps Shu Mountain, the Great Zhou, and the Great Qin could also give it a try, but the gap between the cultivators of the same generation from other sects and forces was somewhat large. Generally speaking, cultivation partners could be husband and wife, but as time passed on the long path of cultivation, most of them would turn into companions who could support each other, and could discuss Tao. The union between Yang Tai and Feng Shaolan, whether it was their personal cultivation or the strength of the forces behind them, was almost destined to be one-sided by Yang Tai and Feng Shaolan. Most of the gossipers were actually women, and most of them were jealous and envious. Hearing Irosa's words, Sun Shuer also understood, and a bitter smile appeared on her face. Zhao Huan frowned and said, "This is also an objective problem. We can't stop ourselves from moving forward just because of what others say, right? I've also met senior sister Xiaolan before, and she doesn't seem to be a petty person." In fact, other than Yang Tai and Fang Xiaolan, there were also disciples of Xianmen Tianzong and Purple Cloud Dao who had become cultivation partners. They had also met when they were young, and the two were in love with each other. After they had a solid foundation in Dao, they got married. However, although that disciple of Xianmen Tianzong was extremely outstanding in the outside world, within Xianmen Tianzong, he was not outstanding, unlike Yang Tai, who was the center of attention. Yang Tai sighed and did not speak. Beside him, Irosa said calmly, "Even if you have deep love in your heart, and are willing to give up your life in times of danger, not many people will be willing to completely become another person's vassal. The more competitive a person is, the more it will be like this. She doesn't care about the rumors of outsiders, but the barrier in her heart, the pride in her heart, is not something she can easily let go. She doesn't seek to be superior to others, but at least both sides are on equal footing." Sun Shuer also sighed and said, "Some people are willing to sacrifice themselves for love, while others are not. This is not because the latter's love is not deep enough, nor is there a difference in who is superior. It's just that people have different personalities." As senior brother Irosa said, "If you love each other so deeply that you are willing to give up your life in times of danger, it doesn't mean that you are willing to become the other party's vassal." Senior sister Xiaolan would probably prefer others to call her perfected Bihuan, the future perfected Lord Bihuan, or even Dao Lord Bihuan, rather than perfected Lord Tiantai's wife or Madame Yang. Perfected Bihuan was Fang Xiaolan's current Daoist name. Sun Shuer looked at Yang Tai and said with a bitter smile, "Senior sister Xiaolan probably already had such thoughts, right? Her personality is not something that can be pushed around by a few slanderous words from outsiders." Yang Tai also smiled bitterly. She's already under a lot of pressure. That time, she might have exceeded her limits. I'm already very happy that she's able to stabilize her state of mind while cultivating and not advance rashly in a rush for instant success. Hearing this, Irosa and Zhao Huan also shook their heads. Although they did not say it out loud, Irosa, Sun Shuer, and the others all sighed in their hearts. Perhaps it was a little hurtful to say this, but if there were no major accidents, it would be extremely difficult for Fang Xiaolan to catch up to Yang Tai in terms of cultivation. As mentioned before, the gap between the two was not just in terms of individuals. The gap between the forces behind them also existed objectively. One had to know that Fang Xiaolan had started cultivating earlier than Yang Tai, but now, she had already fallen behind Yang Tai. Slowly Zhao Huan said, "I still feel that there's no need for that." Yang Tai's smile was a little bitter. He shook his head and did not say anything else. Everyone else also fell silent. It was really not good for them to comment too much on such personal matters. Xianmen Tianzong's group rapidly advanced, breaking through the void and heading into the distance. After a while, everyone's expressions suddenly changed. Yang Tai, Irosa, and Zhao Huan looked to the right side of the sky. They saw that the void there had broken apart, and some figures appeared. Irosa swept a glance over them. People from the Great Qin dynasty. The relationship between the Great Qin dynasty and Xianmen Tianzong had always been good. Although after the end of the Battle of Shu Mountain and Xianmen Tianzong's rise in power, the relationship between the two had weakened slightly, they were still on good terms. Now that they had met, whether it was Yang Tai's group or the cultivators from the Great Qin dynasty, they naturally would not be rude. They immediately stopped in their tracks and greeted each other, then decided to simply travel together. Among the group of cultivators from the Great Qin dynasty, the person in the center was a yellow-robed woman. Yang Tai and the others were also very familiar with her. She was the daughter of Qin Emperor Stonefeather, Shi Xingyun. "Princess Xingyun, this junior greets you." Yang Tai and the others greeted her. Shi Xingyun smiled slightly and stopped them. "There's no need to be so polite." From Shi Xingyun, Yang Tai and the others learned that after receiving Lin Feng's warning, The Great Qin dynasty had also stopped expanding and began to consciously stabilize and shrink. The main force of the Great Qin dynasty cultivators, including Qin Emperor Stonefeather, were also approaching the area around Guxingshan. After meeting up with Xianmen Tianzong and Purple Cloud Dao, they would decide on the next step of the plan according to the specific situation. However, Shi Xingyun had received a summon from Qin Emperor Stonefeather and came from the Divine Land. As everyone traveled together, Zhao Huan sent a voice transmission to Yang Tai. Tai, Princess Xingyun's mood doesn't seem to be right. Yang Tai nodded silently. Although Shi Xingyun's expression was as graceful and calm as ever, there was a faint hint of worry in the depths of her eyes. The group traveled all the way to the area around Guxingshan. Before they could get close to Guxingshan, Yang Tai and the others suddenly received instructions from Zhu Yi. Don't go to Guxingshan, immediately rush to the realm passage between Infinite Wasteland and the Divine Land, and return to the Divine Land as fast as possible. The sudden news caught Yang Tai and the others off guard. The Yudu race is coming to Guxingshan? It's worse than that. Zhu Yi replied solemnly. Tianlong Kuan and Blue Sky Dragon King have left the Xianhai without warning, and are heading straight for Qin Emperor Stonefeather's base. The cultivators of the Great Qin dynasty are retreating towards Guxingshan, and the dragon race is chasing after them. Tenryu Zhen's recovery speed is extremely bizarre, exceeding everyone's expectations. He has already recovered from his weakened state after experiencing the calamity. Meanwhile, Huangshan Dragon King has successfully experienced his last calamity and recovered, achieving the Dharma-ending realm, and changing his name to Tianlong Shen. A series of bad news came, causing Yang Tai and the others to be overwhelmed. The deeper information contained in the news made them feel a chill down their spines. Almost at the same time, the cultivators of the Great Qin dynasty received another summon from Qin Emperor Stonefeather to quickly escort Shi Xingyun to the base. Chapter 1172. Yang Tai digested the news from his master, Zhu Yi, and frowned. Master, are the Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror still in the Xianhai? Slowly Zhu Yi said, not bad. Yang Tai, Ingroza, Zhao Huan, and the others all fell silent. Only the Kuan Dragon King and the Jade Sky Dragon King came out of the mysterious sea. The more powerful Yuan Dragon King, the newly advanced Shen Dragon King, and the great Phoenix Sage who had entered the mysterious sea earlier didn't come. The Taishu Temple was still in the Xianhai, but the dragon race was fighting on two fronts. The deeper meaning behind this was thought-provoking. This did not mean that the Taishu Temple had been defeated in the mysterious sea. Otherwise, the dragon tribe would not have divided their forces. Instead, they would have concentrated on burying the main force of the Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror in the mysterious sea. However, the situation was not optimistic. Given the current situation, the most likely outcome was that the Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror would be on the defensive in the mysterious sea. All the cultivators of the Taishu Temple would shrink back and rely on the Haotian Mirror for defense. Under such circumstances, the dragon race mainly relied on the Yuan Dragon King, who had already recovered to his peak condition, to activate the mysterious sea to suppress the incomplete Haotian Mirror. Although the dragon race was at a disadvantage, it was still a difficult enemy to deal with. They had to wait until the Haotian Mirror's defense was completely broken before the other Dragon Clan powerhouses could make their move. Before that, it would be a long and drawn-out battle of attrition. The Kunlun Dragon King and the others could only wait patiently. However, this way, the experts of the Dragon Clan could divert their attention to the other battlefields of the War of the Two Worlds. Other than dealing with the Taishu Temple that had invaded the mysterious sea, the Phoenix Great Sage would most likely not intervene in the other battles of the War of the Two Realms. Now that the Yuan Dragon King had completely recovered, it was also questionable whether she would continue to participate in the war. In the current situation, the Great Phoenix Sage could only stay behind to guard the mysterious sea and help the Dragon Clan. On the other hand, the original Dragon King Huangshan had successfully gone through his last initial tribulation and ascended to the Dharma-ending realm, turning into a primordial sky dragon. This made the Dragon Clan even more confident. with the Phoenix Great Sage and Shin Dragon King staying behind to guard the Haotian Mirror, and with the help of the Mysterious Sea and Yuan Dragon King. After using the power of the Mysterious Sea to break through the defense of the Haotian Mirror, they had enough power to deal with the people of the Taishu Temple. At this time, the Kuan Dragon King and the Jade Sky Dragon King couldn't hold back anymore. They left the Mysterious Sea and went straight for Qin Emperor Stonefeather and Immortal Dragon City. After all, just like how the Haotian Mirror left White Cloud Mountain to enter the Mystic Ocean, Emperor Qin Stonefeather and the Immortal Dragon City left the Divine Land and came to Infinite Mainland. It was a rare opportunity for the dragon race. With Stonefeather and Immortal Dragon City guarding Western Tomb City, they gathered the fate of the Imperial Dragon Vein within Great Qin's vast territory. They could not be underestimated. At the same time, West Hill City was located in the hinterland of the Divine Land. If the Dragon Clan attacked, it would easily cause other human cultivators to rush over and besiege them. To the Dragon Clan, the Great Qin Dynasty's creation treasure, Immortal Dragon City, was a blood feud and also a humiliation. They would naturally seize every opportunity to get rid of it. Qin Emperor Stonefeather was also very depressed. In order to guard against the Yudu race, he had given the order to retrieve it. Unexpectedly, the Dragon Clan came instead of Yudu. The Kuran Dragon King had been in the Last Days realm for many years, and had always been the second most powerful person of the Dragon Clan. The Jade Sky Dragon King was only one step away from completing the first tribulation. Although he was slower than Huangshan Dragon King and Zhu Yan Great Sage, he was also a great demon that could reach the Last Days realm at any time. He was much stronger than the other demons that were going through the first tribulation. The two strong practitioners of the Dragon Clan came together to block the Great Qin Dynasty in Infinite Mainland. Naturally, Qin Emperor Stonefeather was under a lot of pressure. In the end, no one would have thought that the Mysterious Sea battle, which was originally evenly matched, would have such a huge change at this moment. There are strong practitioners of Yudu entering the Mysterious Sea to help the Dragon Clan. Although the cultivation of Ingroza, Zhao Huan, and the rest were still lower, they knew a lot of information under the intentional training of Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan. Hearing Sun Xuer's question, Ingroza shook his head. No, it's easy to invite a god in, but it's hard to send him away. The Dragon Clan might join forces with Yudu, but they definitely won't let Yudu enter the Mysterious Sea when they are fighting with the Taishu Temple. Zhao Huan said, the main point is that the Yuan Dragon King has actually recovered from the weakened state of the Middle Tribulation. This way, he can use the power of the Mysterious Sea more easily. Ingroza grunted. No, there must be some other reason. Otherwise, even if the Haotian Mirror isn't complete, it shouldn't have suddenly been defeated and suppressed by the Dragon Clan and the Mysterious Sea, right? Although they didn't like the Taishu Temple, Ingroza and the rest definitely wouldn't underestimate this super sacred ground that had always stood tall in the Divine Land. If the Taishu Temple didn't suddenly drop the ball and make a huge mistake, then there must be some unexpected changes that caused the situation to change so drastically. Ingroza bared his teeth, and his snow-white teeth formed a stark contrast with his dark skin. The Taishu Temple won't hold back at this time, and try to draw the disaster to us and the Great Qin Dynasty. According to the judgment of Grandmaster and Master, the Yudu race has reappeared. In the current situation, the most likely target of attack is the White Cloud Mountain of the Taishu Temple. Trying to persuade the dragon race to stop fighting so that they can retreat back to the White Cloud Mountain is their best choice. Yang Tai said solemnly, if both sides are evenly matched and keep each other in check, watching the Yudu race rampage through the world while fighting the Taishu Temple in the Mysterious Sea, the dragon race might not be able to accept it. If the Taishu Temple asks for a truce, the dragon race might really agree. In that case, the Taishu Temple will return to help the White Cloud Mountain and fight the Yudu race. In turn, the dragon race will replace the Yudu race and gain freedom and the initiative in the next battle. Although the dragon race has always been arrogant, they might not be so stubborn against the Yudu race that suppressed them for many years, even if the Yuhuang Celestial Sea has fallen. Zhao Huan took in a deep breath. However, if something happens to the Taishu Temple and the situation takes a turn for the worse, the dragon race might not accept the possibility of a truce. That's because they might bury the Taishu temple in the mysterious sea. Even if they have to pay a price, it's still within their range of acceptance. Their gains after that would be even greater. The Haotian mirror had terrorized the demon race since ancient times until now. It had gone through 3 eras, and its name was known throughout the ages. Its threat was deeply engraved in the soul of every demon race. If there was a chance to bury it completely, no matter if it was the dragon race, Yudu the great sage, the enchantress, and the rest of the great demons, they might temporarily put down their internal strife and work together to the greatest extent possible. In a way, it was no longer the dragon race restraining the Taishu temple. Instead, it had become the other demon races helping the dragon race to restrain the strong practitioners of the other humans in the divine land. Yet Lin Feng and the rest had no choice but to accept it. That was because the demon race that was about to step into the divine land was the Yudu race. If left unchecked, the Yudu race could turn the entire divine land into a wasteland. Not long ago, the human race had been at an advantage, but now the initiative had fallen into the hands of the demon race. Kunlun Dragon King and Jade Sky Dragon King's ambush on Emperor Qin's Stone Feather and Immortal Dragon City was just the beginning. Ing Luoz's face turned even darker. He curled his lips and said, "What exactly happened in the mysterious sea? Why did the Taishu temple suddenly collapse?" Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan also had the same doubts. The two of them stepped on the Permitha Golden Bridge and transformed into golden light that connected the sky. In an instant, they crossed the endless void and rushed in Gu Xingshan's direction. Slowly, Zhu Yi said, "There must have been some unexpected change in the battle in the mysterious sea. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been such a huge change in such a short time." Yu Hongyan stood beside him and nodded. "It's a pity that there is no information in the mysterious sea, so it's hard for us to get accurate information. What we know now is from the Kunlun Dragon King and Jade Sky Dragon King, who left the mysterious sea. We don't know the specifics, but we can be sure that the Taishu temple isn't doing well." Her red eyebrows furrowed slightly, as if they were sharp swords dripping with blood. Although the Yuan Dragon King's early recovery from his weakened state was unexpected, and the reason is unknown, I don't believe that the Taishu temple didn't make any preparations. There are all kinds of situations, and they must have considered the worst-case scenario beforehand. If it's only Yuan Dragon King recovering to his peak state and Huangshan Dragon King entering the last day's realm, even though it will bring enormous pressure to the Void Temple, it shouldn't be enough to catch them unprepared, to the point where the situation instantly changed, and even vaguely showed signs of collapse. Even though the Haotian mirror has left the divine land, it's still the #1 treasure of heaven origin. Even if it's incomplete, its power can't be underestimated. I've heard my master say that even though the Tai One Venerable is heavily injured, he's still a strong practitioner that can't be underestimated. Yu Hongyan's eyes seemed to have flames flickering in them as he shook his head slightly. Even without Yudu's return to the boundless world, the sudden change in the battle in the mysterious sea would have wiped out the human race's previous advantage. Now that 2 major events have happened at the same time, the situation has turned around. Zhu Yi looked into the distance with a calm expression. This is the war between the 2 worlds. All the powers are intertwined, and a slight move can affect the whole. He asked, "That's right, where are little junior brother and little junior sister?" Shi Tianhao had already entered the infinite wasteland long ago, together with Luo Qinggu and the others. They had traveled all the way in the infinite wasteland, even deeper than the Qin Emperor Shi Yu and Zhu Yi. However, after receiving Lin Feng's warning, they also started to retreat. After knowing that strong practitioners of the dragon race had come out of the mysterious sea to attack the great Qin dynasty, Shi Tianhao and the rest quickly rushed in Gu Xingshan's direction. Yu Hongyan crushed a voice transmission crystal and communicated with it with his magic power and consciousness. After a while, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Zhu Yi turned to look at her. "What's wrong?" Yu Hongyan's face was a little dark. "I've contacted Tianhao and the rest, but the voice is intermittent. It's blocked by other forces. Although Tianhao and the rest are not in danger now, They are trapped in a maze that suddenly appeared. They need some time to escape. Zhu Yi was a little surprised. Someone set up an ambush? Yu Hongyan shook his head. According to Tianhao, it wasn't set up by someone but formed naturally. However, it's usually hidden and doesn't appear. Tianhao was able to rush over in time and shook the void too much, triggering the maze to suddenly appear. The two of them looked at each other and shook their heads. For a moment, it felt like when it rains, it pours. Chapter 1173. Zhu Yi furrowed his brows and asked Yu Hongyan, "Can you confirm their location?" Yu Hongyan answered, "The voice transmission is intermittent, so it will be even more difficult to lock onto the location of the space. That maze must have distorted the void and formed an independent space of its own, dragging Tianhao and the others away from the vast thousand world. If we want to find them, second senior brother will have to bring the Permitha Golden Bridge nearby to find them, but I'm afraid it will take a lot of time." Zhu Yi shook his head. If that was the case, it would be inappropriate to look for sure Tianhao and the rest first. Just looking for them would take a lot of time. And this was not including the extra consumption on the way. They had time, but the Qin dynasty might not be able to hold on. Both sides had a good relationship. If they did not lend a helping hand in time, the Qin dynasty would be in big trouble under the pressure of the Kuan Dragon King and the Blue Sky Dragon King. The Dragon Clan had chased the Great Qin dynasty all the way to the area of Guxing Mountain. Compared to the Great Qin dynasty, the Purple Cloud Path, which was closer to the celestial sect of Xianmen, was also there. If they did not retreat in time, they might be implicated. Zhu Yi and the others could not just sit back and watch. The Permitha Bridge turned into a golden rainbow and crossed the sky, instantly disappearing into the distance. Its target was still the same, still heading towards Guxingshan. At this moment, Guxingshan had already turned into a tragic battlefield. The vast and boundless golden auspicious clouds were like a boundless sea of clouds, shrouding the heaven and earth around Guxingshan. The golden auspicious clouds were dignified, and a strong majestic aura leaked out, suppressing all living beings. It was as if a supreme emperor had descended upon the world. The golden auspicious clouds belonged to the primordial heavenly dragon. At this moment, it seemed to have solidified and completely sealed the void. Everything inside was like a bug trapped in amber, unable to escape. In this golden sea of clouds, there was a dragon-like light shadow. Its length was immeasurable as it traversed the void for millions of miles, stretching across heaven and earth. If the golden auspicious clouds did not shift the void by a large margin, it would not have been able to contain this unbelievably huge light shadow. This extremely long streak of light kept surging in the golden sea of clouds, like a dragon soaring into the sky, trying to rush out. However, the more it struggled, the more enraged it became. A deafening dragon roar resounded between heaven and earth. It was the voice of the Kunlun Dragon King, an expert of the Dragon Clan in the Dharma-ending realm. That figure of light was naturally the Great Qin dynasty's creation treasure, the immortal Dragon City. As the light and shadow soared, it was like a great wall that stretched across the other side of the world. It exuded a powerful aura that seemed to be able to protect all things for eternity. And at this moment, a huge primordial celestial dragon was faintly discernible in the golden sea of clouds. Violent energy was constantly bombarding the immortal Dragon City. The violent aura was like a raging wave in the sea, slamming against a seawall, wanting to destroy it and kill everyone hiding behind the city walls. The Kunlun Dragon King had already revealed his true form. Even though the immortal Dragon City was powerful, they could only defend passively. Fortunately, the immortal Dragon City's forte was defense, which was why they could barely hold on under the Kunlun Dragon King's storm-like attacks. Emperor Qin Stonefeather stood on the immortal Dragon City, with a gloomy expression. His eyes flickered with brilliance. Although the Great Qin dynasty's cultivators had retreated quickly under Stonefeather's lead, they were still blocked by the Dragon Clan experts at Guxingshan. The Kunlun Dragon King completely released his dragon might and auspicious clouds, locking down the surroundings. Stonefeather and the immortal Dragon City couldn't escape, and could only face the storm-like attacks helplessly. In the Golden Sea of Clouds, apart from the Kunlun Dragon King, there was also a jade-green dragon shadow that kept swimming and spewing out jade-green light. The jade-green light had a powerful arcane breaking effect, and it silently whittled away the immortal Dragon City's defense. Facing the immortal Dragon City and its ruler, the Dragon Clan only felt extreme anger and humiliation. Even the Kunlun Dragon King wouldn't allow the Blue Sky Dragon King to interfere when fighting a stronger opponent, and the Blue Sky Dragon King wouldn't interfere easily either. However, at this moment, the two Dragon Clan experts only had one thought in their minds, and that was to completely destroy the enemy in front of them. Everything else was secondary. However, the immortal Dragon City displayed a powerful defense that was second only to the Hautian Mirror among all the Dharma treasures of creation. On the city wall that was more than 1,000,000 kilometers long, there seemed to be countless people standing shoulder to shoulder on the city wall. They let out heaven-shaking roars in unison, and their wills were like a fortress. With this shout, everyone present seemed to see the same scene appear in front of their eyes. It was the scene of countless human experts in the primordial era. In order to overthrow the demon race's enslavement, they fought arduously. Their main opponents were the true dragons hidden in the clouds. Unyielding, courageous, fearless, united as one, and protecting their compatriots. After tens of millions of years, the humans' noble will of strength was displayed to the fullest at this moment. At this moment, even the faraway divine land was shaken. It was as if the will of tens of thousands of humans had gathered together, forming a torrent of human will that passed through the void and arrived at infinite wasteland, focusing on the immortal Dragon City. In the middle of the crowd on the city wall, a towering figure stood there. His eyes were solemn and dignified. With love and compassion for his compatriots, as well as the courage to never compromise against the enemy, he stared at the Golden Sea of Clouds in front of him and the Kunlun Dragon King. That was the embodiment of the heroic will of the first human emperor in the history of the primordial era, the first emperor of the human race. It was a tall light figure, and within it, one could vaguely see a person. It was Qin Emperor Stonefeather. He also stared at the Golden Sea of Clouds in front of him. As he put his palms together, the colors on the immortal Dragon City suddenly disappeared and became empty. The deafening roars also instantly died down. However, the aura of the immortal Dragon City became even stronger and more profound. It was like a river of time that flowed endlessly, with no beginning or end. Compared to when West Hill City had just been completed, the immortal Dragon City had been improved many times. The Great Qin dynasty was working hard to improve itself. In the Ying Ocean, it obtained Lin Feng's instance radiance, which allowed the immortal Dragon City's power to increase to another level. The fusion of the two extreme time intense, eternity and instant, made the immortal Dragon City seem to be in an eternally unchanging space-time. Under the protection of this power, the immortal Dragon City seemed to be in a different space-time from the Golden Sea of Clouds, the Kunlun Dragon King, and the Blue Sky Dragon King. This made it so that their attacks couldn't harm it. The Blue Sky Dragon King froze slightly and stared coldly at the immortal Dragon City that didn't seem to be in this world. As he looked at the tens of thousands of light figures on the city wall, his eyes became colder and more furious. However, he stopped his jade dragon flame. When the immortal Dragon City fully activated its defensive power, the Jade Sky Dragon King wouldn't be able to touch this treasure unless he could reach the Dharma-ending realm and achieve the body of a primordial heavenly dragon. However, the Blue Sky Dragon King had no choice but to do so in the rotten Dragon City. Someone else could. The Golden Sea of Clouds shook, and half of the Kunlun Dragon King's huge body stretched out. He stared at the immortal Dragon City, and the coldness in his eyes made even Qin Emperor Stonefeather, who was under the protection of the immortal Dragon City, feel a chill in his heart. At this moment, the Kunlun Dragon King's right front claw was cut off at the wrist. It was an injury caused by Lin Feng when he fought with Lin Feng. However, the Kunlun Dragon King stretched out his left front claw and clawed at the immortal Dragon City. His powerful strength, which was refined by many great Daras, clawed heavily on the immortal Dragon City. In just an instant, the Torch Dragon's innate divine ability to control the time of the sun and moon The white jade dragon's innate divine ability to change between the illusory and the real. The jade dragon flame's innate divine ability to destroy everything in the world. The fire dragon race's innate divine ability to incinerate heaven and earth. And the primordial heavenly dragon's innate divine ability to tear heaven and earth apart. Many principles were manifested under the Kunlun Dragon King's claw. After being grabbed by the Kunlun Dragon King, the surging river of time seemed to stop involuntarily. The Great Wall, which didn't belong to this world, was forcefully dragged back to the greater thousand worlds by a powerful force. Flames burned on the city wall, and the terrifying force crushed the bricks and stones. Roar! As he grabbed the immortal dragon city, the Kunlun Dragon King let out a mighty dragon roar. It was the Dragon Emperor's heavenly melody. For a moment, only the dragon's roar could be heard in the void of the universe. The immortal dragon city shook violently. Qin Emperor Stonefeather stood on top of the city wall expressionlessly. His hands continuously formed hand seals, and the tens of thousands of human silhouettes on the city wall also let out a roar. Then they knelt on one knee and reached out their palms at the same time, slapping the bricks on the city wall. The city wall that stretched for millions of miles became more and more ethereal and unpredictable. It tried its best to defend against the Kunlun Dragon King's attack. Although the Kunlun Dragon King's dragon claw made it difficult for him to escape, he finally managed to stabilize his body and not be dragged by that huge force. The city wall kept flashing, and both sides fell into a stalemate. Qin Emperor Stonefeather's face darkened. At this moment he could only rely on the immortal dragon city to defend passively. However, against the Kunlun Dragon King's tyrannical attack, it was destined to be difficult to guarantee his safety. What made him even more disappointed was that the Jade Sky Dragon King also let out a roar at this moment, and streams of Jade Sky Dragon flames rained down. The immortal dragon city, which was being held back by the Kunlun Dragon King, could no longer avoid the Jade Sky Dragon King's attack. The situation was not optimistic to begin with, and now, it was even worse. As the two sides fought, the area around Mount Gu was completely turned into ruins. Other than the battle between the Kunlun Dragon King, the Jade Sky Dragon King, and the immortal dragon city, the road from Mount Gu to the entrance of the passageway between the two worlds was also a mess. The void between heaven and earth cracked, and a scarlet flame pierced through heaven and earth. It chased after a bolt of lightning and another bolt of flame, and the battle turned heaven and earth upside down. Within the lightning, there was a purple-robed old man. He was the purple firmament Dao Elder, Dao Venerate Lan Ting. Beside him, in the flame, was the great Qin dynasty's king in Liang, Shi Zongyue. The crimson fiery light that was chasing after them turned into a cluster of fiery red auspicious clouds, within which a fiery dragon wreathed in flames could be seen from time to time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.